We'll just get cracking. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a small council. We should have Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We have an amazing group of individuals here, and we'll have one more joining us soon. So thank you all for stopping by. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. That also helps out the channel. It helps us out a ton. Also consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way. If you enjoy having this content daily. So support this channel, support this community, support what we're doing. Thanks so much to everyone who does. Okay, so I'm going to introduce these fine individuals and we'll get started. Hello, Jay Chow. Jay Chow
Hi.
is back with us again. Haven't had you here for like 2, maybe 3 weeks or something. I don't know. But been too long. Right, even a day apart. I think it's too long.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah, so I'm Jay Chow. I think this is my cue to introduce myself. Twitch streamer and YouTuber. I study political science and international relations. I come onto these panels and do my own content to talk politics from that kind of perspective and see what I could provide of value and knowledge to these kinds of conversations. I hope to do the same here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All right. Next, we will have Lilac Doll. Lilac, I think this is only your second appearance on the channel. Yeah, very excited. I was happy that you said you agreed to come on today. It was, I didn't expect this. Kind of just like threw that out there. Like, oh, she said, yeah, it's cool. So a little surprise for myself. How are you, Lilac?
Doing all right. Doing pretty good. Yep. All right. So my name is Lilac Doll. I am a Twitch streamer. I do music and I make adult content, and I'm here to talk about things. So I think that's about it.
Cool.
It's a Saturday. The words aren't loaded yet. It's a weekend.
All right. We'll get you warmed up soon. Thank you so much. All right. Next, we have our Dark Lord and Savior. His name is Doobie. Back with us once again. Doobie, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Fine.
It's good. I'm glad to hear it.
Anything else?
Doobie's a frog.
That's racist, and I help run the politics server on Discord, the best and biggest politics server on the platform. If you're not in there, you're a moron.
Oh, there you go. All right. Great. Thanks so much. And last but not least, well, or just last username. Thanks for being around. Last username. Thank you so much. How are you doing today?
I'm super. I'm just kind of flustered because there's if you see that cat carrier up on the shelf over there, I just rescued a cat, I think it's a feral cat, but literally like 30 minutes ago. Found him while I was jogging, and he needs some vet attention. So I put him. He's in there now, and he's gonna go to the vet in the morning and get him checked out. So I was just kind of scrambling to deal with that right before the show, but I think it's dealt with. And so yeah, I'm last username, and I stream here on Twitch. I'm called Econarchy on YouTube, and regular on panels like this. And I'll be trying to increase economic literacy all over the world.
Okay.
Doing that here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, and our final guest is working their way inside, so they'll be here in just a second. Timing not quite perfect, but close enough. Are you there, Blay?
Oh yeah, I just gotta turn on my video in just a second, but I'm here.
Okay. All right. All right. So I'll introduce the topic, and hopefully you'll be ready by then. Okay. The topic for tonight. Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. Blay, please. Thanks for being around. Introduce yourself.
All right. I guess I'll just give myself a brief introduction. I'm Dylan Blay. I've been here before. Very much happy to be here right now. I will link my Spotify and my YouTube in the description. So yeah, I'll do that, and you can find my music there, stuff like that. You know, big fun. Politically, little, pretty kind of far left, but whatever. Excited to chat with you lovely folks tonight.
He means in the Twitch chat. It's not going to be on the YouTube description. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Thank you so much.
Okay.
The topic for tonight: There is evidence to believe that ancient civilizations regularly wiped all debts in an effort to stabilize society. This was necessary for keeping the oligarchy from becoming too powerful and eventually replacing the state. Do you think modern Western societies should readopt this practice, not just for certain types of debt, like medical, but for all debt to large-scale creditors? So yeah, I read this article. I'll put this article in Twitch chat and all that. But I read this article and inspired all this. Yeah, there's apparently quite a bit of evidence to show that was a regular thing. They would just clear debt out, right? And it wasn't even. It was less out of like care for the people they did this, more because honestly the rulers were afraid of the moneyed class and what they would do if they amassed too much power, if there was too much debt, and the repercussions that would have on civilization itself. So this is certainly not a thing that we do anymore. So I definitely want to talk about, is this something that we should, rediscover? Is that even fucking possible in our new society? All right, so we'll do introductions or opening statements. Go ahead, Jay Chow.
Yeah, so on the elimination of all debt, I'm against that because that is going to open up a can of worms or like sort of a Pandora's box that we kind of know is going to lead to a worse cure than the disease, is how I'll frame it as. But there is some aspects of debt elimination that we could go towards, or even to some extent refinancing debt. So one of the things that I will support is student debt. And I don't want to get into it, but students, the ones who are going to be getting degrees and going to do work, they're going to be the ones finding new technologies and going to find economic growth opportunities. And this is something that we could eliminate student debt and get a return on, or a higher chance of return on. But for other things like maybe car loans or health bills, medical bills, and mortgages, then that's a bit more shaky on like whether or not we're actually going to be getting a return on eliminating that debt. Perhaps the reason why in history societies were able to just completely eliminate all debt is because there wasn't as much of a technical system that they had to account for. Whereas for now, we have to make sure that our government, our state doesn't default if they just take on all of this burden of having to pay back to the banks. And we have to also make sure that our interest rates and inflation does not get like way too high to the point where we might even cause like stagflation. So there are some elements in which I will support student debt elimination, and not just student debt. There are some elements in some places in which I will support debt elimination, but for the most part, no.
Okay, all right. Let's go to Lilac.
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to student loan debt, I'm pretty much for canceling all of it. The idea that from the article that you sent us, it sort of seemed like part of the issue was that if all of the people were putting all of their resources and their money towards their creditors, then it's not actually benefiting the overall society. And then, like, what's the point of just having this oligarchy that has all this wealth, but it isn't going anywhere or doing anything whenever you're still working with, like, all right, we had a good harvest, and now we need all that food to go someplace where it's actually going to be eaten. Like, that doesn't really make sense if it winds up spoiling because other people are hoarding all of it. So I think we're in a similar situation where it's not beneficial to the function of our society to have these student loan debt holders that are collecting all of this wealth, and then individuals can't spend as freely, and reduces disposable income, all the economic pressures that are added from having this entire multiple generations of people that are all in massive amounts of debt. It just isn't useful. When it comes to canceling other types of debt, I think that there's an important conversation that needs to be had when it comes to medical debt in particular, because that one is another type of debt that you can't really escape that. You're not going to be able to avoid it. You've got a captive market, rates are increasing wildly. It's not just inflation, but a lot of corporate greed happening there. For things like mortgages or things related to property, those kinds of debts, I'd be less inclined to just take a liberal stance of canceling a lot of debt on those, partially just due to concerns of we don't want to wind up in a situation where people are overly cautious about taking on debt and then feeling concerned that they'll never see a return on their investment. But in these instances, like student loan debt in particular, I think that canceling it is the thing that's most beneficial. And the arguments that I've heard against it usually rest on some argument on the basis of fairness to people that have already paid off their loans, or being too complimentary towards a class of people that could afford higher education, and then discriminating against people who didn't go to college. But that leaves out that there's an entire class of people even above that that didn't take on any debt. So if we're just going to go with a fairness example, like there are still people that aren't necessarily getting the short end of the stick here on this. And since when has economics ever in American finances been about fairness? So like that argument doesn't make sense to me either. So yeah, I'm all for canceling it.
Thank you for that. All right, I like the smart one here. All right, so far. All right, she's outdoing you already, Jay Chow. All right, I need you to step up your game. All right, have a better opinion. Moving on, we got Blay.
Actually, yeah. So for this topic in particular, I have a pretty nuanced take on alleviating debt, so to speak, right? Because typically there's like kind of a, this sort of idea that very far left people like to just eradicate all debt, right? But that's not really how the economy works. It's kind of detrimental to the economy to do that. So I guess I have a more nuanced take on these kind of things. I don't think we should be erasing student debt and like large expenditures. There's a case to be made for erasing student debt, but not in its entirety, depending on how much loans are taken out by individuals. I like the idea of giving some type of like credit. Here where I live in Canada, we have like an assistance program called OSAP for the people who live in Ontario. I like programs like that. They tend to work better. They tend to be more able to be regulated in terms of like output. So they're not really doing much to inflate the economy too much. Again, same thing goes for healthcare. Like I don't want people to be taking out large amounts of debt for healthcare. I believe in more of a social insurance plan as opposed to like just nationalizing hospitals or something ridiculous like that. So there's a certain like type of nuanced approach I guess you could take to alleviating debt as opposed to, just completely eradicating debt. It's not really a feasible option, especially with the current climate of the economy, rising prices and things like that.
Okay. Doobie, please.
So I didn't think we'd be focusing on the college thing, but I guess we can kind of. So less than 40% of the country even has a college degree, right? And like in study after study, those people with degrees report that they're happier, they're more successful, they're more stable financially, and just generally living more fulfilled lives than people without degrees, right? I think like 98% of people with degrees said that they're happy with their lives, right? And like recent study said that U.S. Department of Labor did. So I don't understand what the justification could be for the average person who doesn't have a degree, who has like worse job opportunities, who is doing worse across the board in study after study. I don't understand why they should be forced to subsidize the upper class of this country, because that's what this basically is. People take out loans not just to go to school, right? They take out loans to start businesses, to buy transportation, to cover emergency expenses, to get housing. And I think if we create a precedent where the federal government can come in and just wipe them out, right? Either through paying out of their own pocket, or our pocket, basically, or saying, hey, these debts are unjustified and just canceling them. I think it'll massively discourage financial institutions from taking those risks, because that's what those institutions are doing when they give a loan. They take a risk that this person is going to pay this money back, right? It'll discourage that, and it's going to lock a lot of people into bad housing, not able to buy a car, not able to cover expenses, because it'll be much more difficult to get a loan. This seems like a bad idea.
Okay, and we have our man Last Using. Love to hear what you have to say on this.
Do you really? Okay. Well, so the example here, this article was about ancient societies, and who apparently, the monarchs of said societies would sometimes just sort of wave their hand and wipe out a bunch of debt. Not clear exactly how they did that, whether they just said the debt didn't have to be paid or they paid it themselves. I'm assuming the former. In any case, ancient societies did a lot of wacky stuff that we don't do anymore. Things like, slavery and human sacrifices and willy-nilly invading other countries and so on and so forth. So I don't know how that's really an argument for it. Debt or credit is a pretty fundamental sort of financial instrument that it can be used in all sorts of ways. It's essential to the modern financial system, and there's nothing particularly wrong with it. Nothing per se. It's a morally neutral instrument in itself. It's very important for the quickest way to get an economy to destroy itself is to stop enforcing contracts, to make the rules unpredictable and unenforced, so that nobody knows what's going to happen when they enter into a deal or make plans or plan their financial future or anything like that. It's when people can't predict what's going to happen and what the rules are going to be that you have massive economic destruction. And arbitrarily just canceling debt is about as arbitrary as it gets. We can talk about ways to redistribute wealth from the rich to the poor or provide a social safety net and so on. Debt cancellation is not a way to do that. It's completely arbitrary. The people it tends to help are going to tend to be people who are actually well off because they borrowed a bunch of money and then spent it on something to build their wealth, such as a house or a good education that'll get them a good income. So I don't see why those people in particular need help. Mostly debt elimination is a kind of political gimmick that sort of appeals to people popularly, but it only because those people really don't understand anything about economics and don't realize how silly and arbitrary it is. Okay, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, open to the panel.
Okay, I love it how people who are advocating for eliminating student debt or any sort of debt just don't understand economics when it is completely within the economic power of the government to be able to eliminate student debt. Now, what I mean when I say
maybe
like
in their power
eliminating,
doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Okay, you're right. Those are two separate questions. But what I mean by eliminating student debt, I don't mean like, okay, somebody has this debt and we're just going to erase it. It doesn't exist at all. Goodbye. What I really mean about when the government takes on the burden of that debt is, okay, well, no longer is the debt owned by the person. The government is going to be the ones taking that. And basically what this says is now it's the government that has to pay to the financial institution, what Doobie was talking about, which are the banks, and they're going to love that. They're going to love that because that's making the public pay. Is it really the public paying off the debt though? Because there are two ways. Because there are two ways that the government can do this. How they could pay back the banks. They could raise taxes, and could be like all across the board or just the upper class. Like that's typically the counter argument to that, right? But then the second thing that people don't really like to talk about or mention, I don't know why, is that the Treasury could take out bonds. They could basically increase the money supply in order to do so. And in a lot of ways,
in order to pay off people's debt. So that's effectively an invisible tax on everyone because you're lowering the value of money in order to effectively subsidize a particular person.
Yeah, so then inflation. So inflation is going to increase. Okay, that's your counter. My counter to that is that when you are going to eliminate student debt, what you're doing is you're taking a burden off of what would be to us the people who are going to be working in really high-paying jobs. They're going to be the ones developing new technologies. They're the ones that are going to be driving economic growth. So then my counter to that is that yes, while inflation might be increasing, what I'm saying is that the economic growth from removing that burden from the people who are going to be working in these high producing kinds of jobs is going to be much better than the costs.
You can't just make a burden disappear though, right? Whatever you do, you're shifting the burden from somewhere to somewhere else.
That's right. And I'm shifting the burden from students to the government. I'm not eliminating the burden.
The burden on the government is going to end up on everyone, right? The government is
shifting it from students.
The government isn't always distributed evenly across the population, though.
Wait, and to be clear, you're not shifting it from students. Most of these people are not like currently students, right? So you're not shifting it from students to the government. You're shifting it from the people who report that they're the happiest and the most successful in our society to everybody else. Like,
Yeah, you're
why?
shifting from
Not
people
everyone
in
who has
debt, and
student
people in
loan
debt
debt
Oh,
has
tend
a
to
sure. That's
actually
degree.
be
that's
in a good
that's
position.
that's even better for me. So there's more people who are going to be getting out of this debt.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dewey. It seems like that's kind of an argument in Jay Chow's favor, considering the fact that
How?
students who have well-paying jobs because they were able to attend college would be much happier without the financial burden that they get from actually taking on student
Yeah,
They'll
loans.
be
well,
more
that's what
productive. They'll be more
no, not
productive.
necessarily.
They'll
Why
be
would we assume that
creating
they're
more
more
growth. Is my
productive?
argument.
You could also make the argument that if we don't if they don't have this debt, they'll be less productive because they don't have this debt to pay off. So they've settled for something
That's
mediocre.
a terrible
Right.
argument.
So
People are still
this
productive concerning these
when
kinds of
wait, okay,
independent
calm.
receiving
If people are so productive, then I don't understand why you think getting rid of the debt would make them more productive. Right? That
economic
also doesn't make any
productivity
sense.
and
Because they're
rising.
going to be using whatever the money that they were going to be paying back as debt for other things, such as maybe investing into a home or investing into a family or even like trying to find a well-paying job or a better well-paying
When that
job,
money
or by
gets
starting a
paid,
new business.
when that money gets paid to a financial institution, where do you think it goes? Do you think it just like vanishes into the ether? That money is then used to give other people the opportunity that they had to also get into the good jobs and get training, get degrees and all this kind of shit, right? So speaking as if, hey, there's no financial like production coming from this money because it's been given to a service or something, is really silly, right? They loan this money out. They loan that money out initially to them so they could get a degree. Then when that money's paid back, it's also used to loan out to other people for more degrees and to get them training. So there's production coming from this money anyway, right? What I'm telling you is that it doesn't make sense, right? If we're meant to be like what I don't know if I am, if you guys are meant to be like lefty progressive types, right? To subsidize the people who are already the most successful, already the happiest, already have the most opportunities. Why would we focus on subsidizing them and instead helping the people in the lower classes who don't have degrees, right?
That's a false dichotomy, and we're
who
not
you're
trying
who you're
to choose
attempting to
between
saddle
one thing over
No, it's
who
not
you're
another.
it's not a
attempting
false
Wait, Dewey,
dichotomy.
who you're
hold on,
attempting
wait,
who
Dewey,
you're
do you
wait
think I
I'm
don't care
almost
about
done
poor
with,
people?
I'm almost done with the sentence. Who you're attempting to saddle with the weight of this debt, right, through inflation, because these people who are already like struggling to get by, going paycheck to paycheck, you're saying, hey, we should make it harder for you because I don't want to pay out this fucking degree that I got.
Yeah, I love you,
Oh.
Bi.
Yeah.
You cannot help. The government cannot just give money to rich people without costing the people who they're not giving money to, right?
Yeah, I
If the
love you,
government
BI.
is subsidizing, if the government is subsidizing wealthy people, that money is going to come from everyone else. And if it's the wealthy people getting subsidized, then it's going to get transferred away from poor people on balance, right? Right. You're literally talking about let's subsidize the rich. Let's
Yeah,
take
so
the people who are
let's
already
I want to
well
get
off
rid
and
of this
subsidize them
misconception
at the
that like
expense of
Let's-
everyone else.
Okay, so first off, I was looking for that study Doobie cited about people with degrees being the happiest. Couldn't find it. If you want to send a link to that, that'd be great. Also, 40% of people who hold student debt haven't finished their degree, so they wouldn't even fall into that statistic that you keep citing. And when it comes to, like, a lot of these loans are federal loans. We pay them back to loan servicers who get a portion of money for servicing these loans, but then that goes back to the government. So if we're gonna say like, oh, well, we shouldn't just like help the government be in charge of this, like if you want to get the government out of this, then cancel the debt, let people spend their money outside of that on things that are actually going to have more of an impact. Like everything
government
that I've seen.
paying off
Hold
people's
on,
loans
don't
is
cut.
not
No,
getting the
stop.
government
I
out
was
of
not finished talking. So what I was saying was that everything I've read about the velocity of money is that you want it to be spent in a way that is actually going from one person to another and not going from one financial institution to another. So
Yeah, that's
it.
basically one of the points I was going to try to make, right? If you have more wealth in the hands of people who are able to invest it more freely as opposed to concentrating it into banks, which do get quite a fair sum of money, not just from student loan, but typically most of the money they make is from like mortgage loans and things like that, which are much more costly. You're going to see an increase in like circulation throughout the economy, which is probably going to be better overall for the average person.
If you're paying off loan, if the government's paying off loans, that loan payment is going to go to the bank.
Hey,
No,
issued
not
the
for
loan.
a loan that the federal government issued. Like a currency issuer is not ever actually in debt to itself.
Okay,
Because
if the
it
government
holds
issued the
all of the
loan
chips.
and then essentially pays it off, then they're essentially forgiving the debt. In that case, it's just a government subsidy for rich people.
No, that's not.
Okay, yeah,
I'm
I
not-
want to get rid
I'm
of
not
this
understanding your
But they're
misconception
lending the
that,
money
like,
and saying
or-
don't pay it back. That's a subsidy.
I'm
I wanna
saying
give them
that
a-
if I print the money that I am loaning out, then I'm not in the same position as an individual. There's a difference between a currency issuer and a currency spender. The US government issues
Yes.
currency. So they're in a fundamentally different position. They're not paying this money back to a bank.
If you're
it's a
printing the
federally
money
issued
that
loan.
everyone in the country has to use, then by printing that money and giving it to someone, you're reducing the spending power of everybody else in the country. You're making the money less valuable. So that's costing them. You're effectively just transferring spending power from everyone else to the person who you're giving the money to.
Are we gonna play the modern monetary theory game? Is that what we're doing now?
Like
Well, I don't
that's
know
I'll
what
play
is
that
the
game.
modern monetary.
so
I'm
that's
playing the
modern
Econ
monetary
101 game.
theory
How
is
about
the
that?
one that I'm most familiar with, which is that we live in an
can tell you-
inflationary economy. That's what we're working with.
I've never heard any MMT people advocate for this or even deny what I'm telling you right now. This is really like uncontroversial economics.
I know. I'm just making a joke about printing money. I'm a
Okay.
silly. I'm a goofy.
I mean, we literally do. Anytime we have a war, we find the money for it somewhere.
I'm a
Whenever
goofy.
we
I'm not
want to pull
gonna-
people up, we find the money. But whenever it comes to actually supporting citizens, we're like, oh, we just don't know how that works. Economics don't work that way.
I'm not automatically supportive of any war. I don't know why you're using that.
No,
as
I'm
an
the
argument.
U.S. government. When it comes to the way that the U.S. government treats money and the way that it's issued,
Wars are very expensive. Wars cost us a lot of money.
and where does that
I
come
guess
from?
in some cases we have to spend that money because the alternative is to be destroyed. In some cases that's not true. But in this case, we do not have to subsidize people who are in debt in order to avoid being destroyed. So I'm saying we should not tax people. Not make everyone pay for that. This doesn't seem lots of better things we could spend our money on than subsidizing people who have degrees that'll make them a lot of money, or people who have gone into debt because they have a mortgage and they own a house that's going up in value. You know, these are some of the most well-off people in society, least in need of help.
There are
Yeah,
so
last
many
username,
people with
like-
degrees that are not well off, that are not making lots
People
of
with
money.
degrees
And
are
I don't think that having an
much more
entire
well off than
generation
people
of
without
people that are constantly just paying off debt, like that's so much disposable income that could be going to more useful places.
But you're taking income. You're
Okay,
taking.
so I put
You can't just
I went-
make income. You're taking it away from someone else, right?
I'm taking it away from a creditor, a financial institution that's not going
No,
to
you're
use
giving
it
it
in
to
a way
the
that's
creditor.
most
You're
beneficial
paying off
to
the
the
debt.
economy.
You're paying the creditor.
I'm talking
You're
about
taking it away from
federally
other
issued
people.
loans. I'm talking about the federally issued loans.
It's still coming from other people. If you're paying off a
It's coming
private
from
loan,
the U.S. government, which
and
the
you're
U.S.
giving the money
government
to the
already.
to the lender, and you're charging everybody else. If it's the government who made the loan in the first place, then they're just forgiving the loan, and that's still costing everybody else.
How is
Yeah,
how is
so-
the U.S.
so I
government
put-
forgiving loan costing people? Like it's the government.
Where does the
whenever-
U.S. government
Because
get its
the government
money?
took public
The government
money that was
literally-
belonged to everyone and gave it to a specific person, and then said you don't have to pay it back. So it was just a giveaway. They just gave
This is
money
why
to
people are
someone
so upset about
And
the
that's
to
what
bank
they do
invest
with
it in
corporate
themselves or in a
bailouts.
house and make
Hey
money.
yo, can we get a tax breakdown on how much that would cost the average individual citizen?
Oh my god.
How
Can we
much
get a
will it
tax
cost?
breakdown on that? Because it's probably not that expensive.
Well, it
Okay,
depends
so
how
I
much
put-
you're talking about. If
I'm
they forgave
paying
all
the
debt currently existing, it would be bloody expensive. For
Well,
sure.
I'm not talking about all debt currently existing.
what are we
Why
talking
would we
about?
focus? Why would we focus specifically on
Why-
student loan
why I
debt?
said that.
But if we're talking about debt cancellation, why are you guys so focused specifically on student loan debt, as if people don't also
Because-
have car bills
Because I
and
think
mortgages
the
to pay?
return on investment from eliminating student loan debt is much greater than debt elimination.
Why would
of
you
any
think
other
that?
debt. Because student loan debt is burdening, I would say, people with degrees who could be using that money in better ways, such as investing in themselves or moving out in order to find a good job. Like if somebody just got out of college and because they for some reason they can't refinance their loans, or because they got their loan from an investment institution or like a bank, and they're basically being given, hey, you have to like pay this at this increment now, especially if like interest
what a
rates
loan is,
are
yeah.
really high, then all of a sudden they might be more desperate to find any sort of job in which it wouldn't be as productive if they actually spent the time in order to
So-
find the opportunity that
Also-
would make them more productive.
I'd like to respond to
Also-
him. So I'd like to respond to him just really quickly. So first off, I put the some links to point to the statistic that I mentioned earlier in the chat, in the private chat, Lilac. But Jay Chow. So given that I think it's less than 40% of the U.S. right have a college degree right now. I would need to look up the exact numbers on what percent have like a student loan. right? So that number might be bigger or lower, depending. But it's a minority of the population. But almost 90% of newly purchased vehicles, like non-commercial vehicles, are financed, right? So almost 90% of cars in the U.S. have car loans that the average person is getting, right? And this costs a lot of money out of their monthly expenses, right? So it seems like if you actually wanted to like boost the economy and boost people, the pocket change people have to do with what what they want in their lives, and to make to like pull a fucking anchor off of them, you'd get rid of car loans, right? You cancel all those debts. It seems to me that the reason we're so focused on student loans in this country is because the people that are pushing this kind of shit tend to be people who just got out of college and are dealing with student loans. Right?
Yes, I'm
That seems to be
completely
the
being
factor.
very selfish and just looking out for the best interests of myself and not actually using.
Give me a good
any
reason
sort
you're
of-
not talking about
and-
car
and
loans or
any
home
sort
loans.
of
So
and any
there's
sort of
$1.6
because
trillion
Doobie, hold on, Doobie. I just said, okay, I believe eliminating student debt is going to have a greater return on investment than eliminating any sort of other debt. And I also believe that the risks last username was talking about in terms of, well, what about inflation? What about interest rates? I think those risks are going to be a lot less there with eliminating student loan debt than with eliminating any other debt. So in fact, what I'm doing is I'm already taking account to your counterpoints and still holding my position to be true.
It's not a matter of risk. It's inevitable. If you go and spend a ton of money, the value of the money will go down. Okay, that's like
and I already said that the return of the gains are going to outweigh whatever negatives that you believe there to be. Yes,
What
you can
makes you
mention
think
that
that?
inflation.
Why are you saying that? What
It's
gain?
because you're an elitist and you just think students or people with degrees are just so much better than the average person.
Wait,
You're
no,
essentially
I-
saying
I-
we should
I want-
just
okay, wait,
transfer money
and you
from the
believe,
poor
and,
to the
and
rich
I guess
because
like
the rich
I
are
don't
more
know, you
productive.
believe
sound
that
like
everybody should just
absolute
like do their own
Republican
thing,
Can I
pull
get
up
in here?
themselves by their own
Come on.
bootstraps. Like I don't know.
So, is it last username first or me? I can go. Oh, yeah, first, yeah. Yeah, so basically I'm kind of inclined to agree with Jay Chow. I don't think like an immediate cancellation of student debt is the most effective, but we can take a lot of routes where there would be like, again, like programs I mentioned earlier. We can have registered education saving plans options, which will be more effective at alleviating student debt. Now, there are statistics, and this is why I want to back up his point here, that prove that, again, the average person with a college education makes on average $15,000 more a year than anyone without a college or university education, and that's just pertaining to college. That's not including universities. And typically, university jobs, depending on the field, will pay arguably better unless you take something really stupid like basket weaving, which is kind of a meme, but you get the point. As for my options, like I kind of wanted to lay out like almost like sort of like a registered education savings plan, which is what I was going to say earlier. Basically, government's able to match or give bursaries to people based on specific characteristics that need to be met, which is kind of an effective solution to a lot of problems pertaining to grades. Typically with programs like OSAP and the RESP programs, which the government has, you get to basically there's certain benefits given to people based on, household income, whatever. These tend to be like actually feasible alternatives. This contributes like very, very, very loosely to Canadian inflation that has to do with other things. Canada's not exactly doing the hottest right now for the valuation of their currency, but it has, like, from the data I've looked at, this takes like no toll on the economy and the average person. As for the distribution of like how much it pays, how much the average person pays for these programs and taxes is like pennies. So
1.6 trillion in student debt
Wait.
currently, right? If we paid all that off, that's something like $5,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
If we have a
Right now.
regressive tax structure,
yeah.
but if we actually
What?
structure that based on income, you're saying $5,000 for every man, woman, child, but we're not taxing $5,000 for every man, woman, child. We're taxing based on
Sure,
income
but
in a progressive structure.
Or the
But
charging
some
Also,
people-
on
bond, it doesn't need
inflation,
a
on
raise
this
Here's the thing,
taxes.
if you're
inflation
giving-
issue, on the
If
issue
you're
of inflation,
giving that
having
money to
inflation,
people
no,
who are wealthy, then
but we're
average,
not.
then on average, you are transferring money from poorer people to wealthier people.
Okay, if that's what
right?
you're doing. But here's your comment. You keep going back to inflation. There's a certain amount of inflation that is necessary because what we don't want is people holding on to money. And what makes people spend money whenever the value of it's going down. So, all right, it causes inflation. It causes people to then spend their money if they had more of it. The people who have less money are less affected by
At the moment,
inflation
we have
in
more
that
inflation
circumstance.
than the unnecessary.
Why do you like
amount,
cutting
okay?
people off so much, man?
Because you're wrong. And that's
Because
how
I'm
this
wrong.
works.
That's
well,
not a
must be
reason-
very
I'm-
convenient.
I'm
That's not a
just
reason- that's not a
answering
good
you.
reason
I'm
why to
just
cut people
responding to what
off.
you're saying.
Like, well, I was actually pretty much almost done. Like, just, you keep going back to inflation. I think that that's a risk that can be mitigated. Everything that Jay Chow has said about the ways that the benefits are not outweighed by the risks, or are the benefits outweigh the risks. Like, you keep making this argument.
What do you
but
mean
haven't
by
provided,
can be mitigated? Inflation.
We have an entire branch. We have entire government institutions that just do nothing but look at numbers and try to figure out how to keep the economy going. If we can do corporate bailouts, we can figure out how to take the burden of massive student loan debt off
They
of
keep the economy
entire
going by
generations of
not
people.
making stupid decisions like giving out massive amounts of money to rich people for no reason. That's how they keep the economy going, okay? They can't just automatically compensate for any ridiculous policy that the government implements.
Nice thing with the policy I laid out is this actually helps alleviate some of the problems of loans being taken out and having compound interest attached to them, which means that it's probably going to be less expensive for the type of policies I'm advocating for in my corner. Team Dylan.
What type of policy are you advocating for?
Well, I've advocated for things. So basically, I've advocated for almost like a matching program, right, where the government matches a quarter or half of the investment within like a registered education savings plan, something like that. So instead of
for all students,
well, there's certain students this applies to more. It's based around there's certain requirements you have to meet for eligibility. Here, particularly, it pertains to people of indigenous descent because it's like a reparative measure. I haven't particularly thought out myself what requirements or eligibility.
Interested I am in discussing that. Is it what we're actually? Is it the topic that we're discussing here? Is it debt forgiveness, or is it something? Is it just something else? It sounds like something.
We've shifted into student debt, and it seems like a good way to alleviate student debt is what I'm trying to advocate here.
So you're talking about changing the way education is funded so that people go into debt in the first place.
Yeah, I guess it would be similar to that because it seems like if we alleviated all student debt, just boom, right now, it would become a pretty big tax burden, or you would have to put a decent amount of inflation into the economy, based on printing for that expenditure.
It's also just completely arbitrary.
Maybe I missed the explanation earlier, but I'd really like an answer to the question because I just looked up the numbers just to be sure, right? Just to make sure I wasn't insane or misremembering. So it's just over 10% of the United States has student loan debt, but 50% of Americans reported having medical debt in 2020. 62% of Americans have a mortgage. Where is it?
Doobie, are you an insane
90,
leftist,
almost
or
90.
Trying to be
Shut
moderate?
up. Almost 90% of cars that are purchased get a car loan, right? So why the fuck are we focusing on 10% of the population when this 10% of the population is already going to be part of the group that has the most job opportunities, the most successful, reports being the happiest? Why would we focus on that and not on the average person in this country, who is also struggling under debt?
Because I'm not an insane leftist. I'm not an insane leftist that wants to eliminate all debt or the most debt that would then cause inflation that is not going to have a return on investment. It is the reason why, student debt cancellation or forgiveness is actually possible in my argument is that it is actually so little. As you said, 10% of Americans only have this. That's why there are not going to be a lot of risks into eliminating that debt.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, how does it not make any sense?
Wait, how?
Do you think there's going to be more? Hold on. Do you think there's going to be more?
Okay.
Do you think there's going to be more inflation in eliminating student loan debt, or more inflation because of eliminating mortgages?
Probably mortgages, but if you were to
why is that the case?
If you were to focus on car loans, right, which is $1.46 trillion of debt in car loans, it's actually less than there is in student loans, and far more Americans have car loans. So I'm trying to understand why we're so hyper focused on student loans.
Because
we're
why?
assuming
Here's why.
why we're
Here's-
assuming
you're not
that
listening.
why we're
You're not
assuming that
listening.
why we're assuming that these student loans are going to lead to people being more productive if they're not paying these bills. When, again, we know that this group already reports being more successful and happier throughout their lives.
I
Here's
feel like
why.
I'm actually talking to a wall instead of a frog. Okay.
Here's the
Username
reason.
keeps on bringing up inflation. Okay. I understand the risks of inflation, and that's why when I look at student loan debt, I think I actually hold this
Prime, you
position
got
of
wait
being
one second.
able to do
Wait
that.
one second, Prime. I think your mic's hot or something. It's like fuzz. That's better. Hey, go on, Jay Shao.
You know what? I'm just been repeating myself over and over again, and so have you. I'm gonna
Well, if
hand it
you
off
would say
to
something
Lilac.
So-
intelligent, like we wouldn't need to do this.
There's a reason
Likewise.
why I focus on student loan debt is because when it comes to cars, there are alternatives. You have options. There's at least something closer to a market. When it comes to universities, you have what a handful in each state, all of which are charging really expensive rates as our entire and like you're right, mortgages, housing rates. It's our entire financial system has problems running up and down through it. Like I will never defend our current financial system. But there's a difference between someone buying a car where they have more options and universities which are all effectively in this same system where people expect that they're going to have to get loans. It's a bit of a captive market. It's a bit of, you just don't have like free market principles keeping it in check. It's like it's the lack of options. That's why.
But with Doobie's point, I
There
think
are-
there's something to be said there because cars are a huge expenditure, which more people have taken on, and it's still accumulated less total debt overall. Like, I think that's kind of a bit of the point he was trying to make, right? It's overall less costly, considering what forgiving all student debt would equate to right now. It's an expenditure that more people seem to have, and you can make the case that, right, it increases both economic mobility and the ability for, the economy to thrive based on people having the capacity to get to their job, get to work every day pretty easily. Like, I think there's obviously, like, a return on investment for a lot of the issues we're discussing, right? So, like, for healthcare, if we were talking about that, if we were to make the case for, like, canceling medical debt, we could say, an able-bodied workforce that doesn't have to take on loans would be more effective at working. Or, like, I think we're kind of saying this across the board. And, again, forgiving for car loans, like Doobie's saying, isn't actually a terrible proposition.
Also, I looked it up. 91% of U.S. households have access to a vehicle. 10% of people have student loan debt. There's $1.46 trillion in car debt spread out over 90% of the U.S. population, as opposed to $1.6 trillion spread out over only 10% of the population. So even though the numbers are close, the amount of debt is spread out across a wider number of people. So the impact of a car loan is very different than $1.6 trillion worth of debt on only 10% of the population.
Yeah, the impact on a car loan though still affects more people, and
it's still like I'm not
Right.
trying to defend cars. I'm just saying like this is why student loan debt is I think like a more pressing problem because the direct impact of one loan on one person is much higher than one car loan on one person. People aren't having
what happens-
lifetimes to pay off a car.
So I don't think that makes any sense because what happens if you don't pay your student loans is you might eventually need to file bankruptcy or something, right? Or they will try to find some other way to get the money out of you. If you don't pay your car loan for a few months, they're going to take your fucking car and you can't get to work and your whole life falls apart. I think this is a much more pressing issue for the average person in this country.
You can
That's
lose your
not-
car from student loans as well.
How long does that take?
I mean,
There are
it can
tons
still
of
happen.
options
I'm not sure
available
about
to
the
people.
timeline. It depends on the issue.
There are tons of options available for people with student loans to either put off the payments for a while, to reduce the payments, to spread out the loan. Right? These options aren't really available to people with cars, which is the average person in this country. And because cars are basically required in most of the United States, right? I think that's a much more pressing issue for the average person.
Do you
I
actually
think
And
we
see
need
what
again-
more
you're
walkable
saying?
cities.
And the idea that there are no options, other options for people who want like who who have like student loans. You can just not go to college. You don't need to go to college, right? It's not that difficult.
Do you want to live in a population
do
where no one's
something-
went to college? Is that the
That's
society
not what-
you
that's
want?
not
Is
what
one
I
where
just
people are
said.
uneducated? Like if that's a
Hey, I don't
viable
know-
option, that we can just have people that
I don't
aren't
know how you got
educated.
from hey, if you can't pay for college, right? Even like a community college, don't go to college. To you want nobody to have a degree ever. Like I don't know how you got there, right? There are community colleges that are colleges that are way more affordable, right? That have like free programs if you can't afford it. just go to a fucking community college, right? There are tons of things available to people. I don't know why people assume you need to go to this mess like an Ivy League school or like a
None of us said
state
that.
college, a
Who
state
said that?
college. Well, again, where do people take out these massive student loans?
I
It's
went
not
to a
just
state
Ivy
college. I still have
It's
debt.
not at a community college.
Yes, people do take debt out of community college. What are you talking about?
I went to community
How
college
much
with people
debt
that were
is-
getting. It was like $3,000 a semester times at least 4 semesters. I mean, that's at least $12,000. And when people are going to community college, they're probably poorer, so they're probably going into equivalent amounts of debt as compared to somebody who's upper class who's going to a 4-year state
$12,000.
university.
Okay, so you just try to
But the
compare.
impact for somebody who's making a very low amount of money, that $12,000 is
But
still
this is student loan
substantial.
debt. This is student loan debt, right? So in the penalties for not paying this off, first off, it takes much longer for it to become a serious penalty, right? Where it's actually affecting your life. And then on top of that, what are they going to do? Take your fucking degree back? Right? They're not going to do that. You're still
Well, you were
able
trying
to
to
use
argue
that
that
degree
community
to
college
get a
didn't
job while
result
you're
in
paying off
student
this
loan
loan.
debt, so I just needed to clarify that.
No,
Like,
I'm
we can
telling
argue
you-
about the effects of
I'm
that,
telling you
but if
there
you
are
argue
options.
a point, no, you change your point every time that somebody attacks it.
No, I didn't. Right? I said you said there are no other options. I said, hey, there are options. Don't go to college.
And
go
I'm
to
saying
community
that community college
Get
is included.
FAFSA.
Don't go to college,
so
but go to
totally
community
free.
college.
These are two.
I don't want to be pitted.
Don't go to college
contradiction there.
or go to community college. I'm providing different options for you, right? Get a FAFSA loan from the government, or it's like a grant, right? So it's totally free, right? So you don't need to pay it back. I think California has like the Pell Grant. I'm sure other states have similar shit, right? Do something like that if you can't afford college. I don't understand why people would take out
Doobie, if you
tens
can't
of
afford a
thousands of
car, if
dollars.
you can't afford a car, just buy
Tens of-
just buy a cheaper one.
Use public transportation, save up money, and buy a used car, right? Which people do all the fucking time. They go on fucking Craigslist and buy a junker car because they can't afford it, and they use it to get to work so they can buy a better car.
Okay.
So
do
there
you
are
actually
options
support-
available to
Do you
people.
actually support the position that you would rather eliminate car debt than student debt, or are you just trying to be a contrarian?
I don't think it makes
here?
sense to do either, but I'm telling you that if you're
So
so
why are you
focused-
holding the position in the
Oh
first
my
place?
god, I don't know why this is so
Hey,
difficult for you to
dude,
follow.
No, but
Hey,
because
I
you're
explained
just
earlier.
because you're just doing
I
a whataboutism.
explained-
It was like,
it's
okay,
not
we're
a
talking about
whataboutism.
student
I'm
loan debt,
telling
and then
you-
you're like,
I'm
okay,
telling
well,
you
what about
what's
car
going
debt? What
on
about
here
mortgages? What
is-
about this? And what
is
about
you're
that? Like,
you're
just
exposing
doing
your
whataboutism
bias
over
because
and
I'm sure
over
you
again.
have student loan debt, right?
I do
But
have student
if
loan
so if we actually wanted to address the issue of Americans struggling with
Do you have
debt,
evidence that my biases are
Please,
actually affecting
I
my
think
arguments?
it's been demonstrated in this entire conversation.
Hey, Prime, is
Right,
this the
so-
content you'd like
so
to
it's
add
just
in?
coincidence.
You actually,
all you're doing is just
actually-
It's fine.
If you actually want to put forward a policy, if you actually want to put forward a policy that helps the average person in the United States that's struggling to get by is under debt, you would look at something like car loans or mortgages or medical bills, right?
No,
I
what
don't know
about
why
UBI?
would the fuck
Actually,
would we be
that policy
focusing
would
on-
actually help
So,
all Americans
okay.
in eliminate.
So I'm actually curious too. I am curious because the question was phrased as to all debt, to major creditors, right? That's why I put in the question. But I think it's actually interesting that the focus has been on student loans when there are other loans as well, other huge loans, medical debt, right? There's the car loans, there's housing loans where we just, well, not just, but like 12 years ago, right, 14 years ago, we had this massive crisis in the economy where people couldn't pay off their house mortgages, right, their mortgages, because they went underwater, right? Like, rather than bailing them out, we bailed out the creditors. We made sure they were whole rather than them. So it actually does seem a little weird that we're focusing on this all one point. So to be clear, what I was talking about with the question was wiping all of that out, right? Like, because the burden it puts on like the population as a whole, right? And the choices that they end up making are all driven by debt, all of it. And
You're talking about wiping out mortgages?
Yeah, not to be the bearer
At the
of
public
bad
expense?
Yeah, not to be the bearer of bad news, but that would be like a ridiculously bad undertaking for like
why?
fiscal.
It's the most regressive policy I can possibly imagine. You're just like, here, rich people take like just massive transfer of money from like the poorest people to the richest people in society.
Oh no!
People
Why?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
No. So I'm saying cancel the debt. Right? We could.
When you say cancel, do you mean the government pays it off, or do you mean that you just tell the banks that you can't collect them?
So this what happened with those loans, especially those subprime mortgages, right? Focusing on that, right? Where they pushed people into those loans. They pushed them specifically, whether they were credit worthy or not, right? Subprime mortgages are for people, yes, predatory. The subprime mortgages are for people who didn't have the best of credit, but like you would take on a bigger risk to be able to take that that loan. However, there are people who are prime eligible, right? And they specifically led them away and put them in subprime mortgages. What if we had canceled that? Just said, you know what? These were faulty. Well, like you don't get to.
But those people got the money and bought the house.
Yes,
those people own the house now. So what happens to the house?
Great.
Prime,
They keep the house.
Are we just ticking off?
So the people who borrowed money you can't afford to pay back just don't pay it back, and so this is what's
that's what the debt jubilee. That is. Yeah,
but that money's going to be paid by everybody else, right? So you're effectively.
Wait,
everyone.
Who?
Well,
Yeah.
I think what
we
Prime
all
is
paid
saying.
taxes last year, isn't it? Man? We all get affected by inflation. Okay, we're all doing something.
Hold on. I think what Prime is saying is that rather than the government pay anything back, the government demonstrates, hey, these were predatory practices, right? And you push these loans onto people that you knew couldn't afford them. So now your debts, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not justified. We're gonna wipe it out. You don't get the money, and you lose the property because you signed.
You mean what? The banks who issued the mortgages?
The banks, yeah, the banks that were predatory. We can demonstrate that they're predatory in their practices, and gave these loans to people
basically
that
all
they
banks
knew that they couldn't afford them.
And all of the securities that those mortgages are in, right? Those mortgages are owned by people who have invested like their life savings, right? If you just wipe out all those securities, it's not just the banks that are gonna be collapsed. It's like tons and tons of people's savings that are gonna collapse as well.
Yeah, but also with the concept of the banks collapsing themselves, and we have again, the inability to have loans or the ability to have loans taken out if there's no banks to collapse, which kind of reduces people's actual logistical mobility altogether, which again would be terrible for the economy. So if you were to So think about this for a second. Banks would probably collapse under the weight of canceling all of the debt, considering they wouldn't be able to make those returns. Because I'm really Prime. I don't know. There's two alternatives here. We just tick off the debt altogether, or the government pays it back. Now, the government paying it back might be a little more feasible than canceling it out altogether, because canceling it out altogether banks wouldn't be able to make the returns on that, and then they would inevitably collapse. And the ability for people to take out loans is kind of important to actual logistical movement. So we would lose people like privately held truckers, right, who own their own vehicles. We'd lose things like that. People would have a harder time being able to build or acquire capital to move across the country to get, say, a different job in a different sector of the economy. So there's a bunch of different reasons as to why just ticking off debt would kind of lead to the collapse of banks, and it wouldn't probably not be a good thing.
Yeah, which is why I argue that I don't want to cancel all debt, because that's the consequence that is most likely going to be led to.
So,
canceling all debt is economically unfeasible, flat out.
So, okay, I gave you a specific example as to a debt that'd be canceled, right? Specifically, subprime mortgages that were predatory to begin with, that people should have gone to jail for, but no one did, right? Because apparently we can't do that. Sure, but so if the people's people's accounts are backed, right, by the federal government, right, so that people don't lose the money, right? The FDIC that backs all of it, right? So if a bank fails, it is what it is, right? No one necessarily loses their money there. But on the other side of it, right, if there were failing banks who were causing this, the government could and should. I'm hearing someone typing. If you could mute yourself, please. Mute yourself, yeah, please. Thank you. If the banks are failing, then they should be bought by the government, right? Like those banks, the predatory banks, should have been bought by the government. They should be broken up, turned into smaller regional banks that would actually help the economy.
I think that sounds like a decent idea.
Why?
Why? Why? Why?
Hold on.
I'll tell you exactly why.
Yeah, why?
I'll tell you exactly why. Because those banks literally got too big, right? Got so big that
You're talking about buying them out is a bailout. You're talking about a bailout.
Yeah,
Right? That's what
but
you're
the
saying.
creditors, like you're saying, so it's not the same as a bailout if you're taking the bank away from the owners.
Taking it, what? I don't
So the
understand.
bank fails.
I mean, yeah, the bank fails, so they're in debt. Like the bank is not worth anything anymore, right? They're wiped out. So what do you if you take them, then you're taking the bank off of the hands of the people, right? Of the owners.
Taking it off.
When the bank collapses, it means they're out of money. They're broke.
Yeah, but we're
But yeah, if they file for bankruptcy, yeah.
yeah. So the
So by buying them
government
out, you're
is
bailing them out.
No, it's not buying them out. It's basically seizing it.
Well, seizing what? There's nothing to seize.
Their assets.
The institution.
They're broke.
The institution is there. What do you mean? There's no assets there? What are you talking about? The institution.
Well,
itself
but their
is an
assets are
asset.
not enough.
You
What he's talking about is wiping out the debt entirely, saying this is an unjustified debt, right? That doesn't exist anymore because your practices were predatory, right? And because of this, right, we're now going to take over the bank, basically nationalize this bank, and then go through a process through which this bank is broken up into smaller institutions that can be managed more easily than this massive monster that nearly tanked the economy. Right? I think that's what Prime is talking about.
Do we have the numbers on people who got like a subprime mortgage or loan? Because I'm curious as
A
to
lot
how
of
how many
people.
It was
people-
enough for the 2008 housing bubble.
Yeah, there's
Well-
enough to crash the world economy. So,
Yeah,
that.
So when you nationalize the bank, like what happens to the people who the bank owes money to, right? Like the depositors.
The depositors.
Yeah, this is like when a
It's
bank
backed.
collapses. They're talking about
FDIC, like those are all backed, right? And they would still be whole. Like the depositors would be made whole.
but by the government bailing it. So this is a bailout. You're talking about the government paying off the bank's debt
I mean,
that they
No.
can't pay off themselves.
I could see like a
Yeah,
No,
that's what the bank debt is. It's money they owe to their depositors.
Actually, I don't know. I think it could be feasible for the government to basically start buying shares of already existing banks and slowly like transition them into like maybe like decentrally ran credit union style banks. That actually doesn't sound like a bad idea in terms of decentralizing banking and having these giant conglomerates which are prone to crash. Seems like a better alternative for people to have control of their banking.
Well, hold on. I'm going to put in some financial institution history from the United States. Is that we used to have many, many, many banks a long time ago. And studies have suggested that's correlated to the number of crashes and shocks we've experienced. So what ended up happening is that these banks were consolidated into larger institutions, and the frequency of these shocks, of these recessions, started happening less. But another consequence of it is that it's more like the
Yeah, I was gonna
impact
say,
of
is the
it.
crash more severe when it occurs as well?
Yeah, it does.
By
Yes.
consolidating that wealth.
Yeah. So like 2008 is like one example. Like the previous crash was not as frequent as before, but it's larger because of that. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
the other thing with failing banks is that you can have a failed bank that technically still has assets. What it can have is so oftentimes banks will hold physical property. They will have real estate holdings. They'll have stocks. They'll have bonds. And they might be in a situation where temporarily what they owe is higher than what they have. But through careful and deliberate management, they can get themselves out of that position in time. And if a bank has shown that it has predatory lending practices, which lead to economic damage to the national economy, then it would make sense to have some oversight for those banks to manage what assets they still have left to get them back to at least even breaking even, if not in the black again. So that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's the problem with dealing with debt, is that you had these houses that were they're really overvalued, but then because of the crash, then they become really cheap. Like even if you were to sell that asset, that there's actually a chance that it is going to be less than the debt that was taken out in order to pay for that. So then that's the
So you
problem
can
when it
hold
comes
on to it, and then if the property value increases, if the land is developed, if the homes are renovated in a way that makes them more valuable, if you have actual holdings, if you're holding stock in companies that then rise in value, there are ways that the value of what they have can increase.
Is it correct to say that this sounds like you're advocating for some sort of a debt freeze?
I'm not advocating for a debt freeze. I was just trying to attack this point that oh, it's a dead bank. It doesn't have anything. It's no, it still has things. They're just not enough to cover what it owes.
Yeah, I feel like last season, I'm not sure I'm probably explaining it very badly. Then I feel like I'm being clear, but maybe I'm not. As to like the government becomes so let's say Wells Fargo, right? Wells Fargo was big into all this, right? So Wells Fargo is taken over by the government. It's nationalized, right? Um, that is not a bailout. This is like us see like you've become a criminal organization, and Wells Fargo is a fucking criminal organization. Let's put that out there.
Well,
right?
okay, wait.
Not
What
just for this,
what
not
was
just for
wrong
the
with Wells Fargo? What happened to Wells Fargo that caused the government to take them over? Hypothetically.
So if it's the subprime mortgage, if that's the example we're using, right? And they were not able to. One, they found they were culpable for all of this, right? They were culpable for that. We would cancel those debts, right? Cancel those debts to those people, and then take over that.
Cancel the mortgages that that the bank had
the
issued.
subprime mortgages, yeah.
So, Prime, I have a question for you. Is it like
and then what? Wait. I'm trying to get.
I need to
figure
ask
out what Prime's idea is.
I need to ask a clarifying question. I think this is a question that's going to be like kind of integral to like making this more understandable. Are we expropriating this or are we seizing it? Like, are we for the assets?
Are people having trouble with my audio? Is my audio low? Let me know.
Your audio's fine.
No, to my Twitch chat. Let me know. Fuck, I think it might be low. Sorry. I'll get back to you soon. I'm sorry. I just gotta take care of this. Someone else talk.
We're running off of your idea, but yeah. But actually, I have a point against that. Which is the reason why the banks consolidated in the first place is because smaller banks started to fail. So then bigger banks kind of saw, or a bank saw opportunities to be like, okay, well, let's actually consolidate. Let's buy them out. And so then they merged. So then now we have our JP Morgan. So that's how JP Morgan became so big, is that they started buying out smaller banks that were failing. And so then kind of like, I think what we're going to be doing here is, in terms of like, okay, the government nationalizes a bank, breaks them up, and puts them into the private market. It's just kicking the can down the road of something that is eventually going to happen because of efficiency.
Consolidation of capital moment?
Well, yeah. I actually, I would argue that the reason why, not a reason why, but a good thing about the banks being so big is that they could direct capital and large amounts of it more towards areas in which they think is going to be effective or efficient in return. And you can't really do that with many smaller banks, because they could be doing many different things, and it's not going to be as efficient, one could argue.
I mean, I could imagine, but I mean, I don't really think that this system we have is going to work, like, functionally for another 50 or 100 years. But if we're working within it, why don't we have a bunch of small banks join coalitions and use and leverage both the flexibility of smaller banks with the spending power and just the scale of larger banks? Like, is there any reason why we couldn't do that?
What's a coalition?
If a bunch of smaller banks all agreed to, at times, basically, maybe they had a quarterly meeting to decide, hey, do we want to collectively agree to put this amount of resources towards this particular sector? I mean, or to just do these things that we're saying big banks can do because they have a lot of money, and then having small banks all agree to cooperate. I don't know.
First things first, does anyone like my mic stand?
No.
It's wonderful.
Come on.
Way.
It's a cup. See, guys?
What bigger banks can do, or just bigger businesses in general can do, that potentially gives an advantage over smaller business, is be more efficient, right? To take advantage of economies of scale, right? Certain things, some things are more efficient when at larger scales. Maybe
Right.
banking is one of those things. If you try to, you can have a bunch of smaller businesses coordinate in various ways to various degrees, but if they're not entirely operating as a single firm, they're probably not going to get all of the efficiency effects of being a single firm that's that big. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that businesses coordinate without merging into a single business. that make them somewhat more efficient. But the reason that you do have some big firms that are not just a bunch of little firms coordinating in specific ways is that it can be more efficient to just be a big business.
Yeah, and I think it's good to mention that this kind of already exists right now. There's something called syndicated loans, which are credits granted by a group of banks to a borrower, in which like maybe to Lilac's like idea in that, okay, let's break up these big banks into smaller ones. They could just use syndicated loans in order to do stuff on like a larger scale. I would still argue that it's less efficient, as to last username's point, and it would just be better if they would just consolidate it as one group. But then and I don't know if this is like going to satisfy what you want to accomplish, Lilac, but there are smaller credit unions that perhaps could fulfill a more local role in terms of giving out debt and giving out credit for people who are in the area.
Yeah, I was mostly just curious.
Mm-hmm. Credit unions are so incredibly based.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm curious, like, what do you guys think qualifies, whether it's student loans or mortgage loans? I think the mortgage loans, the predatory practices is a pretty simple thing, right? But like with like a car loan or something like that, what qualifies a loan in your minds as like worthy of wiping out? Right? Is it just that this person can't pay it back? Is it that a lot of people can't pay these loans back? Like if the terms are fair up front and they're presented clearly to the person taking the loan, why would we come in afterwards? Unless there's like predatory practices, right? If it's just like an auto loan or something, why would we come in afterwards and say, hey, actually, this contract you guys agreed to is no good because that one party can't hold up their end of it, so we're gonna wipe it out. Like what's the line there?
I'll take a stab at this. So I fundamentally believe that education is a public good, meaning that it is a good that the government ought to be the one providing for in terms of like how it's being like distributed. Not that it's okay, we're going to have government run schools and it's going to be federal employees that are going to be our teachers. That's not what I'm talking about. And a step towards achieving that, because it's not just like eliminating debt, but would be to take off the burden of people having to go to banks in order to go to school, but they would instead kind of just be like, hey, I pay my taxes, I'm a citizen, I'm going to go to school because education is a public good, in my opinion. I just think education is so important to the growth and function of our society that I would not want a private, like so much private meddling into that good, because what banks are going to be thinking about instead of like maybe the government is their profit margins. Whereas I would hope through maybe like even like congressional investigation is that the government will be more so thinking about, well, what can we do to better our population that will then grow our country?
Cool.
I'd
So
like you to answer Doobie's question though.
yeah, okay. So I'll be.
Did I not?
Wait,
I just said education is a public good. I don't think cars is a public good, and I don't think.
Wait, hold on. Wait,
and like,
please.
I wouldn't even say that like housing.
Oh,
Actually, maybe housing, but okay.
Maybe housing. Okay. so okay, but I understand that mindset, because I'm also somebody who would support like tuition-free college for everybody in the United States, because I also think education is important, as demonstrated here on this panel. But given that this person, these people agree to the terms of this loan in the current system as it is today, right, or a year ago, or 10 years ago, whenever they got the fucking loan, right? So if the terms were fair and they're laid out clearly, and this person agreed to this thing, right? So even if 10 years from now we decide to go with tuition-free college, right, because people get their heads out of their asses, why would we go back and say, oh yeah, well, hey, because we've changed our mind on how this policy should work and how we should do this, these things you did 10 years ago, or this thing you agreed to last year, that's no longer a good. You no longer have to pay this money that you used, that you took and then spent. You no longer have to pay that money back. Like, why would we? I don't understand. Like, where's the level at which? Just why not? Because the organizations that lent out this money that was used and spent on an education or a car or a house, whatever it was, right? Then if their contract is like worthless.
No, it's
right?
not. They're going to get the money back via the government.
We've destroyed the credibility of the system in that way.
No. That's not how debt cancellation works. The banks are still going to get their money back because the government's going to be the one paying for it, whether it's through increases in taxes or taking out a bond.
Well, okay, so Jay Chow's plan is for the government to pay it back. Other people have said they have other plans to just cancel the debt entirely and say it's not going to get paid back, right? So the way it works depends who you ask. But you're saying that you want the government to pay back the loan. So you're still not really explaining which loans exactly would you pay back and why. What's the criteria for whether you get? Because most people who have student debt can pay it back. These are not people who need help, right? Most of a few of them, you can always find some stories where it's like people have trouble paying back student debt. But most people with debt, student debt or other kinds, are the kinds of people who have no problem paying off the debt, generally speaking. So do you want to just pay off all student loans unconditionally?
I'm just saying, like, for the sake of argument, that I would be more in favor of that than other things. But I think for my personal position, I'll be probably taking a step backwards and say I would rather there be more refinancing packages or kind of refinancing programs that would help people who have student loans be able to pay them back.
Help them how?
Do you not know how refinancing works?
I know there's lots of things. Yeah.
Okay, so for example, for me, like, I don't have to pay back some of my loans all at once, or even at or I don't even have to pay it back in full. For example, for me, my personal situation, every month I pay $40 a month for the next 20 years. And then after that, that's not even an amount that will cover that entirety part of that debt.
So do you want the government to refinance loans, or do you want them to just pay off the loans? Two very different things, right?
I'm okay with both.
What are you arguing for? What do you mean both? I mean, which one did you prefer? Which is better? Which one?
I think what's more feasible. I think what's more feasible is refinancing in terms of like political capital. But I think what is totally possible and is okay, and I'm not convinced of any of the arguments that I've been hearing that goes counter to it, is just a complete elimination. I think that is also feasible. But I don't think. I think what's not feasible about it is like public opinion, in that like there are people out there who are like, no, we can't do that.
Talk about our opinions, right? Let's say we can do whatever we want, and you say if you can do, the government will do whatever you want. You would want the government to pay off all student loans.
Oh, geez, if I had that kind of power, then I would do a lot more things. But okay.
But that's what you'd want. So that's what you support. You think that's a good idea?
Yeah, sure. I'll say yes.
Okay. So maybe. Go ahead, last.
Go ahead.
Okay, so maybe I feel like we're getting stuck on the student loan thing again, which again I think demonstrates the bias that I was mentioning earlier. So maybe I'll ask Prime, because Prime, you presented the topic. So again, I can understand in the case of like a predatory mortgage loan, right, or like or something to that effect. But just in general, what in your mind, right, qualifies a loan as something that's unjustified and should be wiped away? Just canceled. Whether it's like a car loan, medical bills, home loan, just like an emergency expense loan, any kind of loan.
What do you mean? They're not a huge burden. We're not talking about medical debt. We're talking about debt in general. Yeah. Generally speaking, for most people who are in debt, debt is not a big burden. Most people who are in debt can afford to pay it off because they use that debt to pay for something like school or real estate that has a huge return on it, and they can easily pay off the debt. Right? You can come up with cases where someone went into debt to pay off medical bills and they're going to have a lot of trouble. But the general case, people go into debt because they're going to invest that money and make more and pay off the debt. So it's not a huge burden, generally speaking.
Wait, but last Tuesday, can you explain medical debt then? Because people don't just go to a hospital because they're going to get a return on it.
No, they do that because they have an emergency and they need to pay for it.
Mhm.
Or they might want
Presumably,
plastic
that's what you're
surgery.
talking
You know, they might want a big ass.
Okay, well, in that case,
they get a
then-
loan to get a bigger ass. You know, this happens.
Right,
That's
but
not
Yeah,
I
what
so
assume
you're
then
they're talking
like
talking
about
about.
so then like in the case that like say I have a decent job but I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and then if some emergency happens, then I'm screwed. Well, now I have an emergency, I have this debt now, and well, it's gonna be if things are gonna stay the same, then I will have difficulty paying back that debt. And even if I try to find a new job, then, well, I have to quit my old one and I'm going to be like, it just feels like in terms of even like medical debt, in which like I don't agree that it should be forgiven. I think there should be another solution to it. And I think there is another solution to it. But I think what
Yeah, so do
Prime
I.
is trying to get
Like
at,
cheaper
well, I think what
medicine
Prime
or
is
ways
trying
to-
to get
other ways to
at
pay for medicine.
is that like people are stuck with this debt. So then, for me, like you say, okay, so you say cheaper medicine. For me, I would say actually, there to be a public option, or even further,
Sure.
Medicare for all.
like this is sure like we can talk like about different ways to pay for medicine, be it public or other reforms of the insurance system or whatever. But the point is, all of those things are vastly more sensible than just paying off debt. This is my point, right? Like any of all the different sort of kinds of social safety nets and wealth transfer policies that I might be against, I'm still more in favor of those than I am in any policy that involves paying off debt, because debt is completely arbitrary and doesn't accomplish what those policies are trying to accomplish, right? If healthcare is too expensive, if emergency healthcare is too expensive,
what
then
do you
let's
think
do
I'm
something
trying to
about it.
accomplish? What do you think I'm trying to accomplish with debt?
I don't know. What are you trying to accomplish? I'm trying to get
Trying to get out of paying your
All you said
student
is you wanted
loans.
to pay off debt, which seems like completely pointless. It's just giving money to people who don't need it.
Okay, I need
What
to
are you
address this
downplaying
really.
the impact of debt on people's households. So in 2000,
What
so
about the impact of
median-
everything
hold
else?
Hold on. So the median household income hit $79,900 in the first quarter of 2021, which was $35,000 more than it was in 2000. But in 2000, the median household debt was $50,000 and $971. Now it has almost tripled at $145,000. So household debt has risen. Household incomes have not risen in proportion to that. So I don't think we can just downplay this as, oh, people go into debt and they pay it off and it's all hunky dory. Like, people are drowning in debt. That's why we talk about it so much, because so many people
The
are
vast
impacted
majority of
by
that
it.
debt is going to be mortgages.
That's
And the
not
reason people are in
good.
debt is because they use the debt to buy a house, and those houses are going way up in value. People who own houses are great. They're doing great. We already subsidize people
true.
to buy houses in all sorts of ways. If you have a mortgage and you bought a house with it and you own a house now, you are just fine. You don't need any help with that debt. Okay?
Right, but last
Like
Tuesday,
the
you
idea
do
that we
realize
should
that like
subsidize
when,
people who own real estate is ridiculous. Real estate is like soaring in prices, soaring in value.
But last username, you do realize that when housing prices do go up, and that's really good for people who do have mortgages or people who are owning the houses, to the people who don't have houses, then that is a huge problem for them, because now all of a sudden they have to take out more money in order to pay for that higher mortgage. So then what like a lot of people are saying is that like Generation Z, that's me, right, by the way, is going to have a lot of problems getting houses in the future whenever they want to settle down, because housing prices are just like going
Yeah.
are,
And you know
are
what
just
would make
increasing
housing
so
prices?
much.
You know why housing prices are going up so much? Because we did so much subsidization and helping people get mortgages and go into debt to buy those houses. If
I
you
disagree.
pay off
I
people's
disagree with that
mortgages, if the
explanation.
government starts paying people's mortgages, they're paying for those houses. They're going to drive the prices up even higher. You
Hmm.
subsidize
And also-
the real estate market. The real estate prices are going to go up, and it's going to be
So,
even harder to buy them.
Perhaps,
also, I
killing
but
off the
think
people.
another-
I have a different explanation
You're
for that.
subsidizing the people who got the better side of that scheme, right? The people
Well,
who,
in my
got the houses,
in
then you're going to
case-based
give them even
communism,
more
I
money, and
want
the people who didn't
everything
get the houses
subsidized.
are going to lose out because the prices will go up.
Okay, so I actually have a different explanation. I don't know how you'll agree with this, and maybe the two aren't like as contradictory as we make it out to be. But to me, the reason why housing is so expensive is because the supply is low. And the reason why the supply is low is because it's not that good of an investment to build houses. And the reason why is because in the United States, our interest rates have been so low to the point where even if banks were to give out mortgages, then the return on that mortgage is going to be really low in comparison if the banks had
build the house gets
put the person who
interest
built the
is the
house.
bank- what the
No,
bank
the
gets.
person who builds the house is different from the person who finances the house. The
Right.
banks aren't the ones building the houses. The people who are building the houses are builders.
Yeah, and the developers who build the house don't care about the interest rate. They want low interest rates so people can get loans to buy their houses from them.
How does Chad feel?
Oh, but
low interest rates is great for
what's
developers.
How do we feel about
what I'm-
public housing, then, boys?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But I want to finish my explanation. Is that if the banks see equities as something more profitable than giving out mortgages to people, then this is going to lead to what I would say and what is happening: a low supply of housing, and therefore the pricing of that housing increasing. And this might be a good thing.
I think
because
low supply?
Because I think recently,
if they're giving out less loans to buy houses, that will reduce the demand, right? It's the loans that increase the demand. The supply is from the developer.
No.
Demand comes from the buyers and the lenders.
Whatever the demand is has nothing to do with whether or not a bank sees an opportunity cost. There could be 1,000 people saying, I want a house, I want a house, I want a house. But if the bank realizes that, hey, I'm going to be earning more money, putting this amount of money, putting it into like some sort of an equity, rather than giving mortgages to these 1,000 people, I'm going to go with the equity.
Okay, well, banks do that, right? They're called investment banks.
Yeah, so I think the housing issue, and it's not in the entire country, by the way. It's on the coast where people are, which are too populated anyway, and people should start moving into the Midwest. But on the coast, typically, right, the reason housing is expensive is because of like zoning laws. Like here in California, with zoning laws for like I think like 3 or 4 decades, which made it illegal to build anything but single family housing on like massive plots of land in the state. Right, which drove down the supply of housing, drove up the price of houses that existed, and just make it much more difficult to build here. Right, so we've gotten rid of that recently. So that could at the end of last year, so that's pretty good. Right, so now they're building houses again. But I really think the answer for the Zoomers, right, is to get off the coast, move to fucking Kentucky or something, move to Nebraska or Texas, or I mean, I guess that's technically on the coast, or somewhere in the Midwest where it's much cheaper right now. You go get a house for a fucking fifth of what it costs in California.
I mean, housing prices have went up in the Midwest as well. I'm looking for stats
It's
on
still
this
extremely
currently,
cheap.
but I mean, it's definitely nothing compared to the coast, but our jobs also pay less here. So it's like you're not really having an equivalent experience. You're making less and you're paying less for a house, and you're also it doesn't always balance out.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I need to look into like how much less you guys are being paid, but
I mean, you can go for state like
so if
median statistics on average salaries, and
Sure.
you'll see, yeah, like we can do the math.
I'm not going to argue that the coast where most of the money is, right? Is where most of like the big industries are, of course. But especially with like after COVID, people working from home more often. I think it's like, fuck, I need to look it up again. It's like 30% of the population now is like full time or work from home. I think people should start moving to the Midwest because this work can be done from home. It doesn't matter where the fuck you are. And I can remember like recently so my main house costs like, I think it's like just under $1 million right now, right? And I compared that, right, which is a pretty big house in California, to like house of a similar price in fucking Oregon, and I would be able to get acres of land, right, with a giant house on top of it, and that's Oregon, which is so pretty populated. If I were to go into somewhere in the middle of the country, I'd be able to get so much fucking more. So I don't know. I think that I think people should start looking away from the coast, really.
You're all
It's
still
impossible. I can't be yelled at. I'm correct. Fuck you.
Well, I agree that zoning is also a part of the problem as to why housing is so high. But the prescription of just move, I think I'm gonna lean towards Lightlight's explanation is that, like, yes, the property might be a lot cheaper, but what's also cheaper is your standard of living, as well as what else you have to do on that property. So a lot of the times, like, even in Long Island, New York, if you go farther away from New York City, you actually have to get your own septic tank because it's sewage there and whatnot. Like, the water system, the plumbing there is not as developed as like other places. So you also have to like account for other things in, like, if you want to like live in like the bumfuck middle of nowhere, how strong is your internet, how reliable is your electricity grid, and whatnot. Like, these are also things that makes living on the East Coast probably a lot more better in terms of utilities, because it is well developed. So, like, yeah, if you're gonna get like a cheaper house for a cheaper land, the reason is probably because you're gonna have to be paying more for other things.
Yeah, and that doesn't just pertain to utilities as well, right? If you don't have access to, like, I mean, depending on where you live, like, there's. Oh, sorry. Depending on where you live, right? There's going to be access to certain commodities, so certain things might be cheaper as like an expenditure. Say you want to order food or something, right? Whereas you might have more difficulty doing that. I guess you have to do like a cost benefit analysis as to what type of like opportunities or facilities or things you have access to within your like locality. So I
Yeah,
think
so
to
be
know
an
too,
adult
right?
and weigh the pros and cons. In one place, you get cheap housing, but maybe you lose the 2 gig internet access. You get like 40 gig. I'm sorry, 40 megabytes. And in the other place, you pay way the fuck more, but you have faster internet. You can yell at people on Discord more easily. Like I don't
There's
know, weigh the
several
options.
factors that
Yeah, but then all of a sudden your remote work opportunity, your remote work, oh, you could just do everything at home. If you just have like 40 megabits of speed of internet, then what are the chances that you could actually do that work correctly?
You don't need that fast an internet connection.
Uploading and downloading files in which you need to like update databases.
Yeah.
Would Medicare for All accomplish that?
It would depend on the type of medical debt, really.
it's a big somehow.
Well, for me, it would depend. Like if it was like a cosmetic surgeries, I wouldn't want to get rid of those loans. But if it's like cancer, someone had like a heart surgery, then yeah, I could be fine with it.
Elective?
Yeah, I don't want to be paying for people's like boobs. Okay, like that's not. I'm not interested. Oh God.
When you say somehow get rid of the debt, what's the somehow? I don't understand.
Would there be like a
Like-
tax benefit? Using, I guess it, yeah, if you count like a tax benefit or a write-off as like medical expenditures, so like say you have outstanding debt, you could apply for some type of like, I don't know, decrease in tax. I have no idea. So like something like that, I could see that as being feasible. So kind of, yeah.
Let me ask you this: if you're going to pay off people's medical debt, why not just pay for people's medicine instead? Then the people who can't get the debt can still take advantage of your program. Why would you have a program that makes people borrow the money and then pays them? Why not just pay them in the first place?
It's about the debt that already exists.
Yeah, we're
Like,
talking about previously existing debt. I'm in favor of social and like.
So you're
social
talking about a
health.
one-time paying off medical debt that exists right now, and that's it.
No, my plan would be to like nationalize the entire medical industry. Like
Whoa,
most
let's
of
talk
it.
about one thing at a time here.
Extreme.
Again, maybe it could. I mean, if you had some sort of like I suppose you could have a retroactive Medicare system that pays for things that happened in the last 5 years, and then people could file insurance forms for something they already paid for. Could do it, I suppose. It still makes more sense than just paying off all medical debt, right? My priority my priority, I would say, is if you decide your priorities, decide if you want to help people who have unexpected medical or extreme medical expenses that can't afford it, then find those people, have some means to figure out who those people are, and give them that money. If you want to help people who are in whatever different situation, then figure that out and give them money. The criteria that you have to be in debt is a really arbitrary criteria, right? Because some people who are in debt need help. Some people who are in debt don't need help. So I don't understand why you would even involve debt in this solution. There's just no reason for that. Yeah, like why you don't even have to use the word debt in that. Just people need financial assistance and people who don't. Why does it matter whether they went into debt because of it or not?
Well, last username, I kind of want to argue this point because I feel like this is something that you would agree with, and that wouldn't that kind of punish people who are being responsible with their debt? Like, okay, I'm managing my debt well, but then all of a sudden, just because somebody else wasn't, like, they had an emergency, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and bootstraps, whatnot, okay, they get their debt forgiven, but mine, I have to pay it back because I'm actually doing my stuff right. Like,
because you can afford to.
Even?
Sure, yeah, isn't that what you want? That people who can't pay their debt get help, and people who can pay their debt don't. Doesn't that seems more fair than just saying whoever happens to be in debt gets paid? And what you're saying is that the people who have already paid their debt get punished, because if you worked really hard and paid off your student debt, and then the policy comes along and says, okay, anyone who didn't pay off their debt yet, we'll pay it off for you. But if you already paid off your debt, then too bad, you get nothing. That seems to be punishing people who are responsible.
It just feels like whatever decision that we make, it's going to be unfair for one group over the other. And
well,
I'm simply just
what you
looking
consider
at this,
fair
like,
is that people who need help get it, and people who don't need help don't. then your policy should be just a program to transfer funds to people who need it based on some criteria, on some need criteria.
Yeah,
right.
I'm not really
while I
considering
could argue
fairness.
about that, it's a far more sensible policy than any policy that involves debt or figure than paying off people's debt.
I think last username is
But I have a
IOPing.
question, last username. Like, if we have something, like help people who need help, so we've got somebody who needs help, and part of what they need help with is their debt. How do we discuss that? How do we talk about that if we try to just take debt out of the equation?
How do you talk about it? You talk about the help that they need, rather
Okay.
than whether they're in debt. Why does it matter whether they're in debt or not?
I
If they
mean, like,
need-
I'm
they
just
need
trying
the
to, I'm
money.
trying to understand, how do we help somebody whenever we're saying, like, should we forgive debts? And then, so, like, if it was, all right, we've already sectioned off, if we were exclusively talking about the scope of people who need help, then we could talk about debt, and that would be within the scope that you're defining, yeah?
Said it once, I'll say it again.
No.
I think last
No?
username is psyoping us into less fiscal spending.
I'm not even getting, like, we haven't gotten to that. We're just like, if you're going to fiscal spend, at least spend it in ways that make sense and actually seem to realize what I thought were your own values, right? Helping people who need help at the expense of people who don't.
Look,
So-
Right? That's all I'm advocating.
What if
I'm
I
just
could
trying to
help
get to there.
somebody-
I'm joshing with you, buddy, okay? You taking it a
know.
little too seriously. I'm a silly guy. I picked up on some Canuckness the last time you said the word about.
Good for you. Nice. Very observant.
Are you
So, how,
What about?
like, if somebody needs help, and the way that I could help them is by paying off a debt that they're in that they will never get out of, and is preventing them from being the most productive member of the economy that they could be were they not in this debt, then I feel like debt would have to be addressed there, if that's the way to help them, yeah?
No, it's not, because the reason they
No?
need help is not the debt per se. It's because of presumably whatever they spent the debt on, like an emergency medical expense, right? I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
but if I can't go back in
'Cause if they
time
spent
and
the
prevent
debt
that debt from
on-
occurring.
on a diamond-studded back scratcher, then you probably don't want to help them, right?
Well, but, like,
Wait,
what if they have
so-
medical debt that I can't
What do
go
you
back
mean I
in
can't
time
get my
and
diamond-studded back scratcher? It's not a government expense?
Up to you. Well, what are your
Wait,
values?
so last
I mean, if
username.
insurance will cover it.
So
Big
we've
girls for everybody.
we've agreed on most of this panel, Mr. Last username. But I feel like there's like a point of disagreement here. So from like medical expenses specifically, right? And I don't mean like elective ones. I don't mean cosmetic surgeries or diamond-studded back scratchers. I'm talking, you got like a heart issue and you had to get surgery,
It would
or
be
you were in an
life-threatening if
accident.
you didn't have it.
You're in an accident and your fucking leg was chopped up and you had to get it put back together. Right, like these kinds of things. I think that I'm totally okay with wiping those debts out. Like it seems like you were more hesitant there. Can you explain why?
Who?
Me?
Yeah.
Why am I hesitant to wipe out all debts? Like, I mean...
No, not all debts. Like specifically medical debts that aren't like elective. So whether it's like an emergency medical expense, meaning someone was injured in an accident and now they have $100,000 in medical bills, right? Like
Well, so
these kinds
first
of
of all, what if the person who has that debt is perfectly capable of paying? What if they got lots of money? What if they're rich? Why would you pay off their debt? And second of all, what about the person who has that expense and can't get the loan? Do they not get anything from your program because your program only pays people who are in debt? Why not have a program that just says, if you have these expenses or you had these expenses, then we'll give you the money. We don't care whether you're in debt or not, or whether you just have a huge bill that you haven't paid yet, or whether you haven't paid the bill because you haven't got it yet. Whatever. The point is, if you need that money, then you get this. Then you get it from us. Why does debt have to have anything to do with it?
Hold on, but so maybe I misunderstood you. Are you like in favor of like free healthcare then? Like
No.
it sounds like
But
what you...
I'll take free healthcare over debt, over free paying off your debt.
Okay, because I
Easily,
mean,
any day.
I'm in favor, like I said, of free healthcare, right? And like I said, my position on this is probably more extreme than like most people on the panel. But so if we were to like wipe out this debt, right, and provide free healthcare for people in the United States, I mean like required healthcare and preventative healthcare. Do you agree that it would make sense if we were to go that route to get rid of current medical debt? If it's for something that wasn't elective.
Say it again.
Okay, so if we were to go to the route of providing free healthcare to people in the United States, right? And I don't mean like elective surgeries. I mean like required and preventative healthcare. If we were to do that, don't you agree that it would make sense once we take that step to then erase existing medical debt for things that weren't elective?
No, I'd say it might make sense to extend the policy retroactively and say if you've had one of these covered expenses in the last X years or whatever you think the policy can afford, then you can submit that and get it paid for, I suppose.
Okay.
But that's still not doesn't involve debt, right?
I mean, sort of. It involves the government paying debt for people, right, to get rid of it.
Well, it may work out that way for some people. Some people may have taken a loan to pay that expense, and now they'll be able to pay it off because of the payment they got. But that's just incidental. Like, I don't see why the government should care whether that is the case or not when they decide to pay, because they're not going to care about that in the future when they pay for the healthcare. Why would they care about it in the past?
I feel like I'm missing your point here.
Wait,
So
they are going to be
You're
caring about it in the
you're
future
saying you have
because
a
you're
policy
arguing
of just
for
paying for
giving
people's healthcare.
credit.
yeah, my policy would be that healthcare would be paid for every American. Yeah.
Right. So starting at the point that policy was implemented, no one would go into medical debt because no one's paying for their own healthcare.
Right.
But you're saying that some people have some debt from healthcare they paid for in the past, and you want this program to apply retroactively to some extent. I still don't see why that retroactive application of the program would care about whether people are in debt. Why wouldn't it just look at, okay, if you had these expenses in the past, then we'll pay for it, right?
I see what you're saying. So in effect, the same thing is happening, right? They're still getting the debt paid for. They're still getting this bill paid for. But whether it's debt or a future surgery that they're going to have that needs to be paid for, you're saying it shouldn't matter. It should just be that medical expenses are paid for.
If that's the policy, that policy makes a lot more sense. Yeah, if your policy is just providing free healthcare, then just provide free healthcare. Don't pay off any debts, right? And pay for past healthcare expenses that are, if they can show that they paid for the healthcare, then
just had free healthcare.
Reimburse them.
Well, hold on. He's agreeing, but I think you're agreeing in a weird way for some reason. I guess technically it wouldn't be like focused on the debt, but in effect the debt would still be paid off, right? So like,
I guess so. Yeah, if someone had to borrow money and then they get reimbursed, then they could use the reimbursement to pay off their loan, obviously. But there's other ways that people could have paid for it, right? Maybe they borrowed from a family member. Maybe they just paid for it and they're just real broke now because they had to pay for it. Maybe they got the bill and they just haven't paid for it and they're in collections, right? So there's all these things where they wouldn't be in debt, but they still need the money.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there could be a situation where somebody has a medical procedure before this plan goes into effect, and then the plan goes into effect, and then they get reimbursed for it, and that just kind of becomes money that they now have. Like, it's a check, and then they can use that? Is that what you're suggesting?
That would seem like the most sensible way to implement this plan.
I was just trying to see if I
given the goals that do
getting you.
For me, yeah.
No qualms for me. I have to agree with Doobie. I think it's just like another way of approaching the problem that we're trying to solve, regardless if it's.
But
like,
it's not.
More
it's very, very different
than
the problem that was proposed in the topic, right?
Yeah, and then the topic was well, hold on. The topic was on debt, but then if the topic was on how do we solve medical stuff, then I think like what you're proposing would make a lot more sense. But we're talking about debt, and that it just kind of feels like, oh, we're all talking about debt, but then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, what about this?
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Ooh.
The question was, should we pay debt? And my answer is no, you should not pay off debt. If you want to help people, you should figure out the people who need help and pay them and help them. And it shouldn't have anything to do with debt. And it seems like Doobie agrees with that, and it seems like you guys agree with me. So the answer to the topic is no, do not pay off people's debt. Do something else.
Yeah, we
I feel like I know we're getting kind of close to the end of the panel, but so if I wanted to like make sure I got this in, as the resident Jewish person, 1% Ashkenazi, don't ask questions.
Whoa.
I feel like I need to point out something interesting about the topic, right? Which is this long history the civilizations have of wiping out debts, right? In a lot of these cases, when they did that, because the Jews were the money lenders back then, because they were forced into those positions by theocracies that didn't allow Christians or Muslims to loan debt with an interest. So they forced Muslims to loan debt with an interest. So they forced Jewish people to loan debt with an interest, and then they were upset when the interest bill came. They don't want to pay it off, so they said, "Hey, we're wiping out all the debt now, and we're going to take all your assets, and Jews get the fuck out of our country." So I think it's pretty interesting that that's the history of when this actually happened, right? Typically, it was like Jews were made scapegoats for doing the thing that they were forced to do anyway, and thrown out of countries like dozens of times for this sort of thing.
In other words, you're
Just
all
FYI.
anti-Semites, basically.
Hey,
Basically, yeah.
Doobie, I don't want to do this. Like, I wouldn't do this, in fact. But do you think it would be fair if I said that you were a little bit biased because of your background and what you just said?
Are you implying that I'm just like a greedy Jew and this is why I don't want to cancel the debts?
Well, you were applying before that I was just a greedy college student that wants to cancel out my student debt. Is that not
Well,
what you were
see
applying before?
well, that's
I'm just
true
looking
first
out for
off,
myself.
but that's true first off, but
That's
it's
true for
okay to
myself.
say,
So
and
if
it's
that's
okay
true
to
for
say it
myself,
because
if
it's not
that's true for
racist. But
myself, hold on. If
you
that's true for
attacking my
myself,
Jewish identity
how's that?
is racist.
Well, you were
Let's
attacking
take
my
it back.
student identity.
Yeah, well, you know
Yeah,
what,
but
Doobie? You denied my Jewish identity, okay? I'm
okay.
very hurt by that. Very hurt.
Also, financial institutions are not run based on ethnic principles now, so I feel like the implicit argument you're making there seems very kind of like odd, like not in congruency with the times that we are currently in. Unless you're trying to make the argument that like the Rothschilds and the Fairchilds are all running the banks, which I mean, like has like that. No.
Well, Doobie's just been playing the association game this entire
Wait,
time.
hold on.
So
Should I put a
to be clear,
tinfoil hat on top of my bull yarmulke?
to be
or
very
no?
wait, hold on. So to be very clear, I don't think there's a problem with acknowledging the fact that Jews were overrepresented in these industries because they were forced to be overrepresented in these industries. I think that's totally fine. I'm not implying that Jews are like just genetically predisposed to lend money to people, right? What I'm saying is just an interesting fact about the history of debt forgiveness, or when countries wiped out debt, is this, right? Is when they did it, it tended to come with a fucking pogrom where they threw out all the Jews. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I believe anti-Semitism existed, like absolutely, and still exists. Definitely.
I got called the gay slur at the record store a couple weeks ago.
Oh, well, I'll say no. I don't know if that was implicit. No.
No, I'm not in
Not
favor
from
of getting
Doobie.
rid of that.
That was his
Medical
whole
debt.
thing.
Well, because that's voluntary, right? Medical debt, yes, right. If it's not voluntary, if it's for like something required, sure, but not. But student debt's voluntary, right? They voluntarily entered the contract, right? So I don't see why we should be paying it off.
And they don't need help. They spent that money. They invested that money in themselves, and it's going to pay
Right.
off.
Yeah,
Right?
this
Sure, anything could happen, but generally speaking, look at the numbers, to look at the averages, people with degrees get way more. Prime, if you want to help people who are having specific problems, then target your program at those people with specific problems. Don't just say all students, because most people with college degrees, on average, make much more than people without. So if you just target your program at all people with degrees, you're just transferring money to the people who don't need it. Nope. Why do you think the entire economy would benefit from subsidizing people?
We've done economic
people?
models on this. We've looked at the numbers. Other people that are
What
smarter
It
than
would
me have
stimulate
been
the
able to
economy
show that
by
this is what
paying
would
into
happen.
other things.
But the people who otherwise would have that money could also invest that in areas of the. You can't. What about the people whose money who you had to take money from to pay off that debt? They could have done
You
something
weren't
with that
taking
money.
it
They
from
would have
people, you
spent
were
that money in
taking
the
it from
economy.
creditors.
Yeah, like
What?
consolidate it and turn
You're
it.
taking it from financial institutions that are profiting off of this business model. And the American economy relies on having a certain proportion of the population that goes to university. So, on a macro scale, it's not about individual choices, it's about the entire way that this is designed to function.
Those financial institutions, if you just take all that, like, so you're talking about the kind of loan forgiveness where you just say where the lender has to pay for it, where we just say the people who are in debt, you don't have to pay the lender, fuck you lender. Okay, so in that
No,
case,
the lenders are gonna get paid. I don't know what's with
No,
your
no, no, you
guys' concept.
that's not what she's saying.
That the
Okay?
lender
I know
is
that's
not
what you
going to
want,
get
Jay
paid
Chow,
for.
but it's not what
The
Lilac
lender
would
is
say,
going
okay?
to get
But
paid
yeah,
for no
Jay
matter
Chow,
what.
like that's it's not money that I think that, like, from a macro social level, I don't think the creditors are entitled to the money that they got because a certain proportion of the American population will go to university.
Those creditors.
Well,
it's not,
exceptionally
well, I have
inflated
to. Well, I'm
those
just gonna
creditors
be in the middle and just get
everyone.
beat up
Okay?
by everybody.
Those
Okay,
are
I
people.
disagree with you on
Anyone who
my
owns
life.
shares in those banks, which is everyone. Okay, anyone who has any sort of savings, all that savings is in stocks, and those stocks are in those banks. So if you just screw over the entire banking system, you're screwing over everyone. You're screwing over the entire capital market system and everyone's savings. Like it's massively,
Great, so we're all
massively
tied to a bad
disruptive.
system, so we have to defend
Yes.
it with our lives. Okay, got it.
So don't
Well,
just
Lilac,
shoot
can you
don't
propose
shoot yourself in the
something
foot.
better? Hold on. Okay, let's just get into it.
Yeah, so Prime, the reason the student loan thing doesn't make sense to me, right, is because I see this as like an investment, right? An investment in yourself and getting the training and education to get better job opportunities. So to me, it would be like if I were to take a loan as a small business, right, and I took that loan, hoping that it'd pay off, and I invested in my company to buy another location, whatever the fuck, and it didn't pay off. So I went to the taxpayer and said, hey, my investment in myself, in my company didn't pay off, so please give me money. Right. And the average like small business has like $200,000 in debt right now. Right. So I see this is exactly the same kind of thing. They've invested in themselves in their future, just like small businesses do. And like I think like half of small businesses fail after 5 years. Right. So why wouldn't we also be advocating for paying off all small business debt? Right. Right. Adults are taking out the investment. Yeah.
Children?
I don't know if I call them kids. And if we consider them children, then maybe they shouldn't be signing loans at all, like that, signing contracts at all.
Weird.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but Prem, this is a case for small business owners too, who take out a loan to start a business, to build something, to invest in themselves, and half the time it falls apart. Half the time they're still burdened with his debt. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, not all of it. I'd be pretty strict as to like what fields are getting like the free code. I don't want people use this a lot. Expressive dance or whatever the fuck. You don't need a degree. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not.
I don't think it is. I think there's like a I think there's an over what's the word I'm looking for? I think there's an overemphasis on college education. I think that
We're
you don't
overeducated.
you don't really
Way
need it for
overeducated.
like most jobs that'll make you a good living and then you can build a family with.
The reason it seems like you need a college degree so badly is precisely because college tends to be so heavily subsidized in various ways.
Right.
And
Wait,
as a
this is so
result,
confusing.
people are encouraged to go to get college when they don't really need it. And as a result, employers expect you to have because a college degree does tell employers something useful about you, right? People who get through college and do well in college tend to be good employees. So if a lot of people have college degrees, then employers will use college degrees to decide who to hire, even if you don't really need the degree. Even if you're just like making coffee or pumping gas, they're still going to, a person with a degree is going to be a better gas station employee than a person without one. So if lots of people have degrees, employers will use that to choose who to hire, even if you don't really need the degree. So if we subsidize the degrees, all we're really doing is making it harder for everyone to get jobs because it's harder for everyone to prove that they're in that those elites of good workers. We're making them jump through these hoops and spend all this money and spend 4 years just to prove that they're a good worker. When if we didn't subsidize it, the standards would go down and you'd be able to get a job pumping gas without a degree.
Okay, this is really weird. So before you guys recognize that people who have college degrees are earning more than people who don't. And probably the reason why that's the case is because with their degree, they're able to get a better wage or they're able to get a better job that's more technical. Okay. And then you also say, but then you also say that, well, you don't need a degree because it just proves that you're a good worker. But I would argue that the reason why you're a good worker with a degree is because you went through the process of going to get an education. So a big misconception about higher education that I feel like is very prevalent about people who are like anti-college or something is that all you're going to learn is like the technical stuff and like just what you do for your major, but that's just not the case. You learn a lot about teamwork, you learn a lot about how to research or how to like do other things that maybe not pertain to your degree, but like other things like maybe data analysis. Like for me, I went to a liberal arts college, which makes me a bit more well-rounded. I had to take a mathematics class. I had to deal with stuff with spreadsheets, and a lot of industries and a lot of companies kind of sees that as something very valuable. So I think what Prime is trying to get at, and I think what even like me, Lilac, and Dylan have been getting at, is that in a lot of ways, getting a college degree is necessary to moving up the economic ladder in this country. And from a state point of view, from a country point of view, having a well-educated workforce is what's going to make your country stronger in terms of economy
I don't think so.
as well.
Wait, also to
Wait,
add,
can I?
just
Oh,
said,
go ahead.
okay, do we go? Can I go after you?
You may, sir. Actually, you can go ahead of me because you haven't spoken in a
I
while.
just wanted to add what Jay Chow was saying about the things that you learn or get from college. A big important one for a lot of careers that are probably based around business or finance or something like that, which you do get for like a lot of people get educated in. Those are very like common things people take.
Yeah.
A big part of that is networking as well, which I feel like was a very important thing that we didn't touch on. That's how you establish those
You
connections.
snapping your fingers? What the fuck?
I am, because I'm
Okay.
an East Coast liberal
God
and
damn.
privileged.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
can I?
Dylan, all right? But basically, you make those connections with people, right? In certain parts of industry, you establish relationships with them. And in terms of those people, you know, maybe you have a guest lecturer at your college course, right? You talk to them after, you make friends with them, bam. Now you're talking to them on a semi-regular basis. Now you got a job working for some nice finance company that pays you well. It's all about the connections you make, right? You might make connections with potential business partners. Might make connections with potential employers.
Okay.
Based on, internship programs offered at a
So-
college. Whatever it is.
So I think, so I agree that currently, if you have a degree, you're more likely to do better in life. Right? That is how it is right now. However, I think one of the reasons this is the case is because employers tend to dismiss people who don't have degrees, because we've created a culture in which, you know, the degree is like everything, right? Even if it's not even related to what the fuck you're doing, if you have a degree, you're automatically ahead of the person that doesn't, even if they have more experience than you in a lot of cases. Right?
Yeah,
So a lot of people are missing out on
I think
opportunities.
the degree is saying, it is proving something about you.
Right.
But my argument is that the degree is not, the going through college didn't turn you into that. It's just proving something that you have something that you already had before you went to college.
Well, that's a counterfact.
And my
I
evidence
think
for that, my
the
evidence for
college
that,
degree.
excuse me,
Sorry.
missed interrupting. The evidence for that is, well, there's a few things. First of all, the stuff you learn in university tends to be stuff that you don't use on your job. And if you check whether people actually remember the stuff they learned at university, you find out they don't. Another thing is like people get much higher income if they graduate, but if they drop out like right before they graduate, like they go through 3 years of a 4-year program, they hardly get any income effect at all. So employers care if you have the diploma, but they don't care like 75% as much if you have 75% of a diploma. You get 0 for that. So it's like the diploma that they really care about. There's a whole book about this called The Case Against Education. There's tons of data and evidence supporting this hypothesis that school is a really long, arduous certification program, and by subsidizing it, we're just forcing people to get certifications that they otherwise wouldn't. We make it much harder to prove that you are a good employee, and especially hard for people who are poor or who are trying to change their economic status, because they're the ones who can't afford to take all this time out of their life to go to school, right? Making it really hard to change
that's why they
to
take out
economic
debt.
mobility. Yes, but even that's hard, right? Like it would be
How?
you'd have
How
more
so?
economic mobility if people who had potential and were really poor could just prove that they had the potential in a way that didn't require taking 4 years out of their life and spending all this money.
Well,
and
that's
yada,
another
yada.
thing. Do you guys really think rich people are the ones taking out debt to go to college?
No, I didn't say
Poor
that.
people,
I think
right?
future rich people are.
Well, I would
But
agree that we
it's expensive to go to college,
overemphasize-
even if you got a loan, right?
Well, yeah, but
I-
who's the ones taking on the debt in order to go to college?
People,
who
poor
has-
It's not the
people.
middle class. It's not the rich people.
Who
That's
has
not
that
true.
wealth?
The middle class,
It
of
might
course,
be,
takes that
actually,
debt to go to
it might
college.
be the middle class. You know,
What?
in a lot of cases, if you're like middle class and you're going to like some Ivy League, in which is like $70K a year or a semester even, then yeah, taking out debt in that case would make sense. But like for the majority, sure, okay, like it's
No,
poor
what do you
people that's
mean?
gonna be
Most people
taking
don't
out.
have $1,000 for like an emergency. Why would we assume they could pay for college? Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say even the middle class probably is incapable of affording with the cost of like tuition lately without assuming some kind of debt or.
Cool. So then the argument of, oh, we're just wealth transferring from the poor to the rich is kind of just falls apart in terms
No, it
of
doesn't.
canceling student debt.
no, it doesn't, because
But even middle class people are having like trouble with paying for college.
No.
They're still taking on that debt.
No, Jay
People
Chow, like
who get
there
a
are-
degree and have loans are in a much better position than people without degrees and no
yeah,
loan.
because of this this
Still
idea
a
that
transfer
is
to the rich.
perpetuated, and even it's being perpetuated here, that people like need college, right, to get by in life, and I think that kind of thinking, it leads a lot of employers to just not hire people or consider people that don't have college degrees, even if they're qualified otherwise. Right?
And yet, when you do a comparison between people who have college degrees and people who don't have college degrees, then it just so happens that there's an increase in income from that.
Well, but
No,
we've already talked to the
explained why.
economic advantages. But I would like to just say that, like, I personally have benefited from my education. And I say that as somebody who had very little education prior to college, and I cannot say that I would be the same person without it. I want to live in a society with more educated people for the self-interest of I like to talk about things that I just have better conversations with people that had more education. And I want more people like that in society. I wish we had not. I do think it is bullshit how we just use it as a piece of paper to economically incentivize people to get it. And it's like, it's just a class barrier in that respect. Like, I wish we had a better system for this so that people could get better education, but also not overemphasize it in the job market. Because you're right, like, in a lot of cases, it just says that you were able to finish something over 4 years, and that's about it.
Yeah, all things
I
considered,
think-
as what
oh,
you
God.
were saying, people, I feel like there's been a little bit of negation on the actual importance or value that comes from people having an education or pursuing an education and an interest that they enjoy, right? Like it's kind of it also does relate to probably the reason why people with, again, like Doobie said earlier, people with college educations are happier. They probably had the opportunity to explore something they were passionate about. And by proxy, even just under the current system we live in, them receiving that paper opens up a gateway for them to have more opportunity to do something that they enjoy or that their interests are aligned with.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a college education, you're more likely to be able to talk about Nietzsche and fucking neo-pronouns and utilitarianism and whether or not we're in Nevada or whatever the fuck, right?
Doobie,
Or whether
did you go
there's
to
like an
college?
evil AI at the end of time that we need to satisfy right now or it's going to torture us forever. No, I didn't go to college, and look,
And
my
you're
brain is
talking
much
about
bigger.
this.
My brain is
And yet you're
much bigger
talking
than
about
everybody
this.
else's here.
And yet you're
Yeah,
talking about this. You're talking about everything that we went to college for.
that is literally the point that I was just making.
So perhaps
right?
going to college isn't what's getting us to talk about those topics, because you're the ones talking about it.
The implication, right, that you just have better conversations with people that went to college, right, and have a degree, right? I can understand there being like some kind of like trend there, right? If you went to college, you're more likely to be exposed to these things, and maybe that's better. But I think you could solve that issue, right, if you just wanting better conversations with people by encouraging people to be curious, to use the internet, to read shit, right? Go to the library once in a while if you're old, right? I don't think that the answer is, hey, go to college and take out debt and get a degree.
Doobie,
There are lots of
Doobie, when
things
you
that
go
are
to-
good
what
that
do you
I
put on your
don't think
resume?
should be paid for by the
I
government.
don't
right?
have a resume. I look at resumes. What the fuck are you talking about?
There's lots of things that I like that I want more of in the world.
How do
but
you
I
get
don't
employed
think should
without
be
a
paid for by
resume?
the government? Because my threshold for whether something should be paid for by the government is much higher than just I like it and I want more of it. It's got to
Wait,
be
before
more
you become an
complicated. That you
employer,
got to
you
look at the
become an
costs and
employee.
benefits.
Well, not if
Yeah.
you-
Well, okay. Well, when I was an employee, right, when I was being employed by someone else who sold promises like I do now, my resume.
Promises?
Yeah, I sell promises. My resume was literally something that
fuck?
I wrote on Word about how much I want the job and how great I am. And with hey, here's my call. I have a high school education. That's it, right? And I sent it to this dude. He called me back, said, "Oh God, you seem really eager for the job." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I need money." And then I got the job and I did well. There you go. I didn't need a degree. Okay. Then like 4 years later, I opened my own business and now I do what he did better than he did. Easy as pie.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Good
I
for
work in
you.
an industry where degrees are like nobody. Like I work in the tech industry. I don't have a degree. I have no problem getting jobs. No one's ever asked me for it in my 20-year career. Asked for the degree, and we don't. I mean, we don't even ask degrees when we interview people. I've interviewed lots of people. It's interesting that one of the most technically challenging industries, and an industry that's doing like where salaries are really high, and it's doing great, is one that has so little interest in education. And I think the reason for that is because it's an industry where there's never enough labor, right? There's like employers are really desperate for employees. They really, really need them. And because of that, they can't afford to be concerned about things that don't absolutely matter for the job. And a degree does not absolutely matter. A degree is something that employers care about when they have nothing else, when they have too many employees and no other way to sort them out, right? When they have like this huge stack of resumes and it doesn't matter who they choose and they go to I guess I'll hire the people with a degree. But an industry where like we'll take anybody who can do this, we really, really need people. There's no way we're going to care about degrees because it doesn't matter. What matters is, can you do this job? So I don't know, just a little anecdotal evidence against education there.
I guess to the question, is it necessary to get a degree in order to do well? Then the answer is no, because you sometimes you just don't have to. You could do really well without a degree. Sure, that's a possibility. However, I think for people who are like growing up and they're thinking about their future, then the what's going to yield them the highest probability of doing well would be to going to college and other things. And perhaps maybe if there was just a coincidence of what you want to do is in an industry in which the demand for labor is really high and supply is really low and you're just going to get the job, then yeah, but that's not for every industry, and it shouldn't also be for every industry as well. So like say for hospitals, if you're a hospital employer and there's a low supply of jobs, high demand for jobs, and you need to staff people, is it something that we should say like, hey, just pick anybody who has any sort of degree or even like a high school diploma in order to do something really technical in a hospital? Yeah, probably not. We would still want to say like, hey, for some jobs and for some industries, it's really important to get certifications and trading afterwards in order to do those jobs correctly, such as like
there's
doctors.
some kinds of jobs that do require a lot of specialized training, and it may be that our current education system is actually giving people all the training that they need in those jobs. But those are relatively niche. Like most people who go to college, the stuff they learn is not like absolutely crucial technical stuff that they will need for the job. It's a bunch of stuff that they don't really need, and they're really just proving that they're the kind of person who can like work really hard and is pretty smart.
You hear shit like, oh, I learned about networking, I learned about friendship, and I learned about how to build relationships with people and how to look for it on Google. I learned about how to appreciate the little things in life. It's fucking bullshit. Read a self-help book.
Doobie's making a low brain take. No one's saying
read a self-help book.
Networking. We're saying that you get the opportunities to meet the right people. You ever hear?
You know where else people are? They're
most
like
people
literally outside, down the street. Okay, you walk outside, you'll meet people, and you might be able to network with them.
Right, like circumstances. It's how you find out about things that are potentially interesting to you, or people you'd want to work with, or potential business partners.
Also, if you think that you got something that was really valuable, or connection, or some skill or something in school, you've also got to consider if I didn't go to school, would I have gotten this on the job? If I just been hired at my job, would I have learned how to do this anyway, right? This is like, you can't just assume that because you learned it in school, you could have only learned it in school.
Yeah, until you realize that you need a degree in order to get the job. So, I don't have a degree, I just don't get the job, and then now I'm broke and poor.
Yeah.
No, if we're considering whether the degree is actually making you productive, you can't just say, what did I learn in school? You got to say, what did I learn in school that I could not have learned on the job? Right?
Yeah, in order to get the job, so like, okay, so for my job, I have to look at job posts. And a lot of them, they have their education requirements. They have their prerequisites. This requires a bachelor's degree.
Yes, but I'm talking about hypothetically.
This requires
a hypothetical system that did not emphasize education.
Yeah. This hypothetical system does not exist.
Yeah. Can I ask?
I know it's a hypothetical system. Of course, it doesn't exist.
Can I ask a question, guys? I'm asking a question now. Thank you.
You learned to do that in college?
Pardon? Did
I learn that in college? You may continue. Go on.
Okay. I want to ask Last Username if he thinks that there's certain careers where it might be too crucial for people to learn things on the job, and that might require schooling as a prerequisite.
Brain surgeons. We don't want brain surgeons learning on the job.
So, like, I want to offer like a personal example. Like, this is a bit of an anecdote, right? But I used to work in nursing, right? I used to be a PSW/FSW, and it seems as a trend that the people who, like the students that came in, who were like part of the personal support work programs, were like unbelievably stupid, didn't have an idea how to take care of a person, to the point of where, they might become unsanitary. They're gonna shit all over the place, like as people do in nursing homes. Okay.
Yes, there are some jobs that need some kind of training. I'm just saying,
like that job requires like less education, but it's still crucial to the job. We still have a shortage here. Are you located in Ontario? You don't have to disclose whether you are or not.
Yes, Toronto.
Okay. Pardon?
Toronto.
Oh, Toronto. Oh, you're relatively close to me. That's nice.
Hey, you teach your mate up and
Windsor, right?
Oh, that's cute.
Right. Either way.
So you understand?
If your point is that some jobs do require lots of training and education, yes, I agree.
Yeah, but on
There's
top
definitely
of
some
that,
jobs, but not most of them.
wait,
right?
but
Not,
have you noticed that there's like a PSW shortage too, in terms of like?
yeah, but you're talking about one very specific job. I'm
That
talking
one
about in
specific
general.
job employs a lot
Most of the jobs that people get a degree for are not jobs that they
Well,
actually
that
need
job
that degree
requires
for
a
you.
degree, but it's also a very like that job hires lots of people across Canada.
Yes, but it's not. Most people are not PSWs, right? You're
Most
talking about
people
one very specific
overall aren't
industry.
PSWs.
I'm
but
talking
it's
about
very
in
hard.
general.
Okay,
in
how
general,
about across the entirety of the medical industry?
it's still a small minority of all people, right? Most people don't work in the medical industry.
A lot of
in
people
general.
in the medical industry.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
talking about
pharmaceuticals on top of that as
education
well.
in general,
People
Dylan.
engineer
I'm
drugs
trying to
like-
generalize. I'm not talking
It
about
seems
medicine.
like there's a lot of jobs where there's going to be like critical failures if people don't acquire some type of education.
No.
in advance.
No, you're wrong.
I don't think
Most
anybody
jobs-
here is arguing against like just education in general, right? We're
Yeah, there's
saying
a lot of
there
ways
are
to
other ways to get
educate
in
for
that
Most
jobs.
degrees are not needed for most jobs.
right.
Hey, if
Like,
there
as
are
far as
jobs
what
that
you
are like,
literally learn
hey,
on
you don't
the
need a
degree.
degree, we have on-site training, and we have to go through this program that is like weeks, then sure. They definitely exist.
No,
Like,
but they don't. That's the thing, is that they don't. The stuff that there's so many degrees out there that people get that don't teach them anything that they need on the job, and they don't even remember what they learned. Like if you test people after they graduate, a couple years after they graduate, and they're doing their new job, they don't even remember any of the things that they learned in school. So they're clearly not doing it on the job because they don't even know it anymore. And it's just
Yeah, but like you do realize that school provides more than just what you learned in the classroom.
Yeah,
Like
it provides power, friendship, and networking, and searching shit on Google,
Research
and
skills
and you know, and
literacy.
working hard under
skills,
stress
right?
because
Critical
you're
thinking.
pushing up against the deadline.
But
This
can
is
you
such
quantify that?
bullshit.
Can you
This-
actually?
that's such
Can you
bullshit.
you have
hope
evidence that it really
from-
does that?
I can't believe.
Yeah, my
Because there
evidence
doesn't
is
seem to be
stupid
any.
because he can't critically think throughout his entire panel. He
Also-
didn't go to college.
Okay.
Another question
Look,
for last username, since he
yeah.
brought up the whole, you have evidence for that. Do you have evidence that people forget? Like, you
Yeah.
might be correct.
Yep.
Is there a statistic for
Lots.
that, or
Oh yeah.
can you share it with me?
Can we quantify this power, friendship, and
I have
networking
it
thing?
on my
Like,
hand.
that? Like, what do you?
Like I say, there's a book called Case Against Education. It's got a huge bibliography of all of that and various other statistics. But yeah, that's
Because honestly, that sounds like some shit that,
Yeah.
that
Does it
college
just
just
surprise
pushed
you?
to
I mean,
sell
Are there
their.
not enough
to
frogs for
sell
you
their
to be
shit
friends with?
degrees.
Is that why you're so like?
I've got
you're
lots of
you're
friends.
hate on
Okay,
Austin?
I'm just asking you to substantiate the thing you said, right? So
Speaking of substantiation, can you substantiate the friend claim?
Ripperoni. They didn't teach you in college? Yeah, fuck that degree. Useless.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me, guys? Can you hear me? Hopefully,
Well, we can hear you.
yeah, you guys can still hear me. Nothing's changed, but hold on. Maybe punch the microphone. Be a true American. Okay, you guys can hear me. I'm using my fucking I'm using my camera microphone. That's the only way I can do it. At least for the stream. I don't know what's going on with my Yeti. All right. Any which way, what I was saying, try it again, is that we will continue on this conversation of Walk On Panel. Stick around and support the channel by hitting that follow button. If you've been enjoying this conversation, enjoying this content, we do a lot of it 7 days a week of content. So hit that follow button right this moment. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live, especially for social chat, for our social media. We have Twitter where we tweet things, right? Tweeting things is fun. If you aren't on our Twitter, then you're missed out on all the good things that we're advertising, things we're doing. Like tomorrow, we're going to have that DGG debate tournament, so that's happening again tomorrow, so come through. Also, of course, we have the Discord's heart and soul of the community. We will have the open walk-on panel on the Discord. Be a part of the Discord. And YouTube is where you can see the VODs. If you missed anything, please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a YouTube member, supporting us that way, hitting that join button. Okay, thank you, Meticulous, for the 12 months. 12 months of subbing. Hey, thank you so much. It means a lot. Seriously, thank you. Shout out to you. 12 months. That's really, really kind. Okay, I'm going to give an outro to all these wonderful individuals, and then we'll transition to the open walk-on panel. We will start with Lilac. Lilac, thanks for coming through. I feel like you had a more frustrating time this time than previously.
Well, yeah, I mean, economics is one of those things that's really best to have qualified people in these panels, of which I am not one, but, you know, always fun. I was hoping to hear some interesting opinions, and interesting opinions I did hear. I'm an adult content creator, a musician streamer over on Twitch, and that's all I do, and I am ready to stop talking now.
Great. Thank you so much. Seriously. And where can people find you?
People can find me at Lilac Doll. I am Lilac Doll on Twitch, Twitter, Spotify, everywhere. So, yep.
Okay. All right. I think you typed in my chat so I can shout you out. Yep.
Yay.
There you go. All right. And please give her a follow. Next, we got Jay Chow, a person I actually very much like having around. He's a cool dude. I can put up a good fight. So thank you, Jay Chow, for coming through and doing what you usually do.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So, Twitch streamer, YouTuber, I talk politics, make scripted video essays on political science and international relations. That's what I studied in college and was able to gather some critical thinking skills in order to navigate through other topics such as economics and such.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Exo Curie, for the sub, right? Sub-assist community. That's awfully kind of you. Thank you for supporting this channel. Hey, guys, we get one more individual person. We can start ourselves a hype train and help keep this channel up and running. So if you like the fact that we're here literally all the time, giving you content, support this channel by subbing to the channel, gifting bits or gifting subs. Okay, next we got Blay. Blay, thank you for coming through, being part of this, right? I know you were busy with work previously, but you stopped in any which ways. Very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Prime. It was a fun time chatting it up with the squad, you know. If you guys want or like any of the things I said, you can subscribe to my YouTube or you know, follow me on Spotify, which I dropped the Spotify in the description again. I don't talk politics there. That's exclusively music. Sorry, I'm not one of those podcast bros. I understand. Fun chat. I've talked to everyone here except for Lilac Doll before, so it's nice meeting you. I don't know if last username's ever been told. He looks like a scheming anime villain. He does a little bit. I mean, come on, we all see it. Just a little bit. Talk to the frog, you know, talk to Jay Chow again. Him and I usually disagree on a little more, but I think we were in pretty strong agreement today. So, yeah.
Sure thing.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much. And thank you, was it Doye, for your 4 months Prime Giving resub. Thank you for that, getting us started on this hype train. And Boji for gifting a sub to Lilac. Awesome. Yay, hey, great. Thank you so much. Enjoy your emotes, Lilac, right? Make everyone jealous. All right, we will continue on. Let's go last username next. Last username. Thank you for being such a great sport, right? You thought you were going to be outnumbered, but you weren't quite. It wasn't quite how it turned out. Still, I knew, right? I knew that even if you were outnumbered, I didn't want you to be that way. But even if that was the case, you could hold your own, as you literally always do. So, thank you, buddy, for coming through.
I just didn't want to take all the fun away from someone else. Yeah. So, you know, bottom line. The original question was, should we pay off debt? The answer, it seems to me, that I got everyone to agree to is no, because whatever you want to spend on paying off debt could be better spent on some more targeted program and people who really need help. So there's that. You're all crazy, but I love you all anyway. My favorite crazy people. I'm also not. I'm not an economics expert, believe it or not. I just know a little bit about basic Econ 101 that I picked up from reading Wikipedia, watching a few videos. Very simple. If I can do it, anyone else can do it, and I would encourage you to do that. Because wow, you'll understand the world so much better. I'm talking to not just people on the panel, I'm talking to the audience, right? It's a wonderful thing, understanding economics. Last username, check out my Twitch stream, last_username, or Econarchy on YouTube. And thank you, Prime, for having me on. Good to be here as always.
All right, for the record, I agree to nothing. I agree to nothing. The only thing I've agreed is that that last username's a stand-up guy, right?
No, you're right.
Really
Prime held on to the ridiculous original idea.
Oh my god. Anyway, no, thank you, buddy. Seriously. You're always a really good sport. And last but not least, we have our friend Doobie, a Dark Lord and Savior Doobie, came through, put up an amazing fight, right? And I really like the way you took this conversation. So I really hope, Doobie, that you'll. Okay. Maybe he's embarrassed. Maybe that's what happens when you embarrass a frog. I hope that you come through in the open panel. We'd love to have you there to continue on this conversation. But Doobie, are you still there on audio?
Yeah, I'm here. Give me like 3 seconds.
Okay. All right. Hopefully this doesn't get too real. Exo Cure, thank you for the sub, for gifting your first sub to AO Rachel, who is a kind person. Oh my god. Oh, hell. Oh, fucking frog porn.
Boj asked for it.
Oh
so.
my god.
Yeah, she's gonna attack me if I don't do it. There you go, Boj.
She will. She will. All right. Well.
I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord. The best and biggest politics server on the platform where Boj is unfortunately a mod who bullies my minions. So yeah, you'll find me there. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being around, buddy. Much appreciated. Guys, we have 3 minutes on this hype train. So we get to level 3 hype train, level 2, 0% down, 100% left. Can we get to level 3 hype train? That's 3 minutes on the clock. Okay. Again, I'm going to thank my kind individuals here who came through and helped us out. If you want to come through the open panel, we love to have you, especially you, Doobie, because you're driving this conversation here. It'd be a lot of fun to really examine this. But one way or the other, my audience appreciates you coming through and being a part of this just as much as I do. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Have a good night.